Everyone to please settle down, and those who are still outside in the foyer area to come inside, occupy your seats. We are about to start. Request everyone to please be seated and kindly place your mobile phones on the silent mode. Namaskar, good morning, and a warm welcome to Day 2 of the 11th Annual Global Business Services Conclave, presented, organized by the Shared Services Forum. Yesterday was a great session, a lot of learning, wonderful deliberations, great insights, and some of you may not have been there, but you have a chance to access it on YouTube, Facebook, as well as on Zoom. Even today, we are going live on the same 3 platforms for you to refer to anytime you wish to. At this moment, let's take a value, IPE, and technology partner, Munivar. So, without wasting any more time, let's dive straight into today's sessions. We begin with session 3, which is Leadership Insights. The topic is shifting from past glory to realizing the art of possible. And the distinguished panelists, I'll request you to join us here on stage one by one, starting with Dr. Sanjay Rastogi, Partner CEC, Head Deloitte, Shared Services Deloitte. Dr. Sanjeev possesses over 27 years of extensive experience in setting up and managing large operations in the shared services and BPO. Beg your pardon. In the areas of finance, insurance, and procurement. He is currently a partner with Deloitte India and heads the company's Capability Enhancement Center. In his previous role, he was the managing director of Syngenta Services, and prior to that, he was the operations director at Metro GBS and has also led the controllership function for Hewlett-Packard. Dr. Sanjeev believes that desire, dedication, and discipline are essential for success. Request you, Dr. Sanjay Rastogi, to please join us here on stage. A loud round of applause for him. We're also joined by Lalita Indra Kanti. Lalita is the head of global business operations for the Inca Group. She has over 25 years of experience in IT services and capability centers. Lalita, in her role, is responsible for GBO operations from 3 regional centers of Poland, China, the US, and the Global Center in India. Earlier to Inca, Lalita worked as managing director and country leader for Cargill Business Services in India. Her experience spans across consulting, sales, bid management, and P&L. She is an active member of the GCC community in Karnataka and a part of NASSCOM GCC Council and past chair for NASSCOM Regional Council in Karnataka. Warm welcome to Lalita Indra Kanti. May I request you, Lalita, to please join us here. Welcome, Lalita. We also have Gopal Venkataramanan, or GV for short, Head Olam Global Business Services, Olam International. GV is a seasoned professional with nearly 25 years of experience that spans across the conventional and outsourcing industry, exposed to the manufacturing, CPG, IT, and service sectors. Prior to joining Olam, GV was associated with Accenture for more than 9 years, playing varied leadership roles in service delivery and solutioning. GV is an accountant by profession, besides holding an MBA. May we have Gopal Venkatramanan here, please, joining us to be a part of the panel. Sandeep Podar, Head GBS India Center, Akzo Nobel. Sandeep is a business leader with 20 years of experience in managing business finance and shared services operations. Sandeep is a business leader with 20 years of experience in managing business finance globally. Currently, Sandeep is leading the Akzo Nobel GBS India Center. Prior to this, he held leadership roles to design and deliver an effective and efficient shared services center at Vodafone, McKinsey, JP Morgan Chase, Hewlett Packard, and Genpact. May we have Sandeep Podar here joining us for the panel. And moderating the panel, Sanjay Gupta, Chief Architect and Member Governing Council, Shared Services Forum. Sanjay has 32 plus years of work experience in the fields of management, business process, finance, and human resources. He comes with a blend of experience in global and domestic corporations, in the private sector, as well as public sector organizations. He combines extensive experience in strategic as well as operation roles, covering various domains in offshoring, financial services, insurance and global shared services, and BPO. Sanjay joined EXL Service Holdings, a New York-based services company. His excellent operational insights and structured approach to find practical and innovative solutions made him the part of initial core team at EXL. As operations lead, he was instrumental in growing the BPO across multiple verticals. Currently, Sanjay divides his time between SSF activities and consulting. May we have Sanjay Gupta here to moderate the session. So it's over to you, Sanjay.
Hello and good morning.
Good morning.
I'm hoping that we are audible, and I'm also hoping that everyone's wide, fresh and awake, which is an advantage that we as a panel have over the ones that you're going to see following, because then you have the opportunity of having an excuse to knock it off for a while, or at least, shut your eyes for a minute. But not here, there is no excuse. So at the outset, welcome to the panel and welcome to the delegates, every one of you. Thank you for turning up again on day 2. And we are going to leverage the day 1. And we'll be talking a bit about how the learnings of day 1 can help us progress better. At the end of the day, business services needs to step up, and we are in the process of discovering how. Till now, the center of the business activity world over was really core services, and slowly but surely, business services is stepping into the domain of such core services. There are now many instances where business services are considered core, because business services have begun to deliver value to the business. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about. We have almost an hour, and I have a distinguished panel sitting aside. Altogether, maybe 100 plus years of experience in various domains, and in the world of services and in the world of delivery. So we'll be leveraging their experience, not just what has happened in the past and what has this industry shown to all of us, but also as to what are various organizations now stepping up to do to improve. And that's what my intention is. This session is about insights. When you're saying insights is that we go and lean into the intellect and the experience of the leaders and share. But the share cannot be one way. So while we will have a little bit of a Q&A session in the end, but in case while in conversation there are members of the extended team who would like to share something, a short snippet or maybe an instance, we'd be okay with that too. So that's the way sharing happens. So we will start sort of our session for that program. So you don't really have to wait till the end. Of course, may I recommend and suggest that we don't barge in at any time while there is a conversation on, but anybody who wants to make a comment is most welcome to raise your hand and sort of give your view. So this is about insights, and insights on how we were, where we were, and where we'd like to go. And where we'd like to go is, we term it a very interesting term. You know, there's a lot of conversation we had about how do we realize, how do we articulate it. And then we fell upon this art of possibles. Saying past, we've got a name for everything that we've done. But what is it that we are possible, what is it that we can possibly do in the future is really an art. Because at times we get constrained by whatever our left brain does, whatever scientifically we can think about, and we always conclude by saying more analytics. And that's it, you know, we are sort of finished with that, more analytics. However, it's an art to say, so long as I'm not stepping onto the toes of somebody else, what can I do to create an environment where I can be a contributor directly to the value. Value itself is a much talked about term. When we talk about value, every one of us is providing value. You start providing value as a business service, even as a business service independent unit, the minute you set up the unit. The very fact that there is a unit which has been set up means it is set up for creating value, even if the value at that moment was only cost arbitrage. If cost arbitrage, and cost arbitrage in some cases is very high, in some cases is nominal because there are other benefits that come to it. But that's value. And to that extent, it is already competitive advantage. It's competitive advantage because your organization has created a center which is saving costs at the end of the day. Thereafter, professionalism kicks in, and you create organizations which are better. Then you create value by providing certain other strategic services. You create value by putting in efficiencies, putting in innovativeness. And so both efficiency and innovativeness improves effectiveness of the organization. Further value has been created, and so on and so forth. So value gets created the minute you start something. Now, what are the additional values that we can create? At some stages, many of our service brethren, myself included, and many of us from our historic baggage, we also come and think about value means we've done this, we are supposed to do this, so long as we have done this, our job is over and nobody can critique us anymore. That's true. Nobody can. The question is, can we step up and step beyond and say that I can do more than what I have been asked to do. SLA is not my limitation. My KRA is not my limitation. Can I improve KRAs of some other category? So we'll discuss about that. And later on in one of our sessions, Rakesh and I are going to be talking more on those lines. So let's take this moment and dive straight. And as per norms of chivalry, I'll ask the lady in the group to share first, Lalita. So Lalita, like we were talking about, IKEA. To a certain extent, IKEA is, and sort of she says this herself, is one of the recent entrants into the world of business services and professional business services. But IKEA has, sort of galloped miles. And we'd like to share her views, not just on how this happened, what triggered this and where she is as a group and, your entire team, etc., but also what IKEA and the leadership is now planning for moving ahead at the pace that you're already moving, the continuity of that pace, and what are the new horizons that you're looking at. Help us go through some of these concepts, Lalita. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sanjay. One of the advantages of being a late entrant is you have so much of past, but it is not your own past, but it is a collective past of the industry. So you just don't have to walk all the 100 miles what others have walked. You can easily take the learnings from what people have done, and what is the right point to start your journey. You don't have to start at the starting line always. That's one of the biggest thing what we've learned in terms of each organization maturity is different, each organization needs a different. So picking from the industry experience, choosing where do you want to start, what is important for you, what is value for your own organization, and delivering that through the GBS kind of an environment is what is important. So I would say we've started late, but we've really looked at what the industry journey has been, what are the best practices, where do we pick and choose from, and start from there. So that has been the biggest advantage, I would say, Sanjay.
Right. So Lalita, absolutely, the context of using the background and the learnings, etc., that the industry was already possessed, and putting that into practice and speed moving, so to say. So that you have put very well to use at that. But help us understand a little bit more about the future as well, and saying what kinds of businesses are you looking at and why, and also what kind of developmental support systems you are putting into place so that your center becomes a strategic contributor to the organization as a large.
I think as an organization right now we are on this massive transformation journey. Transformation both in terms of the process transformation, digital transformation, consolidation. So there is a lot happening from changing the ways of working to really support our omni-channel business models. So the global business operations is what we call the GBS inside. We are really a massive influencer for the transformations. We internally we say we enable the transformations for the organization, because at this point of time transformations is our focus. So we very closely involved with all the transformations across the globe for the organization, where our teams actively contribute and participate. We will get to the things like innovation and other stuff probably a little later, but at this point of time what is important is what we are focusing on.
Okay, well, very good. So let me switch to GV. Sorry, GV is on the other end of this. So GV, you also belong to off-beaten industry, because your product is not one of the common kind of services or products. Your product itself is a very unique feature in the foods and agro industry, which itself is I don't think there are too many organizations who've reached this level of professionalism in that industry. Probably there are, but sort of, at least to me, they're hidden. So one of the things that I'm very keen in knowing is that your business front must be a very different business front kind of an organization than what we are mostly used to, trading, manufacturing, service companies, etc. But your business front is very different. Your markets are very different. And so I'm assuming that the kind of services that you and your center provides must be in certain areas quite the similar to what everybody else does, but in certain areas very different. So help us go through this, and I believe that there are major reorganizational activities that your organization has gone through in order to find a fine niche within the industry. So help us go through some of that, please.
Sure. Very good morning. Am I audible? Yes, great. Thank you so much. Thanks for this opportunity. Thanks to SSF for inviting me to be part of this panel. Little bit about this past, glory, and the art of possible. The way I see it is a continuum, right? This art of possible is kind of very different for each of the GICs. It's kind of relative because not all of us are at the same level of maturity. Each of us at a different level of maturity. So the art of possible from where we stand, what's been our past glory could be very different to each of us. Yeah, but ultimately you would want to say that I want to be a strategic asset, I want to have a seat on the table and all of that, right? But even if you are a strategic asset, what next? So this to me is continuum, and it is relative. A little bit about Olam. We are a global agri and food major. We are headquartered in Singapore, spread across 65 different countries. We are a Fortune 500, 47 billion Singapore dollar top line. Let me kind of step back and talk about this whole reorg and how it has impacted this whole past glory and art of possible. So in January 2020, we kind of announced a transformational reorg, right, which essentially splits our company into 3 distinct and coherent operating groups, right, purpose led. And the main reason for that was to increase the value proposition in a sustainable basis. That was the prime objective of going through the split. So when I talk about these 3 distinct operating groups, I would rather say it as 5 groups. And each of them have a different reach to the market. And what we felt was all the businesses together, we weren't possibly getting the value that we need to get. So we wanted to kind of make the split, but all part of the larger umbrella, so to say. Olam Food Ingredients, right, that's one of the operating groups that essentially is a combination of strategically synergized 5 business groups or 5 business products, right? Coffee, cocoa, edible nuts, spices, and dairy, if I have to name them, right? And the way that they are focusing into the market of the customers is to be bringing to the customers what we call as sustainable, natural, value-added food products and ingredients. Olam Agri, that's what we call as food, feed, and fiber, right? That kind of gets into some of the very basic food that we have. It's a combination of businesses or products that you call as grains, rice, edible oil, and that focuses on transforming these agri systems to make what we call as a food secure future. It focuses a lot on the emerging markets. The third operating group has got 3 groups within that. So I'll pick the first one, which is called as Olam Ventures. This is more like a startup. It focuses on new businesses and what we call as engine 2 businesses, which is a combination of leading edge digital and sustainability capabilities. And we've got businesses what we call as Jiva. Jiva is nothing but a farmer services platform. The main intent for that is to kind of bring all the farming community globally, the farmers and growers, into a platform, right, where they're able to really reach out, talk about the best practices within farming, how they can reach to the global markets in terms of selling the produce. Then we have another engine 2, which we call as Adva, which is more of a sustainable lifestyle platform, how individuals and organizations will have to change their whole way of lifestyle, right, if they have to be making things sustainable. We got something which is on carbon footprint, in terms of how do we reduce carbon footprint and how do we actually measure and monitor all of this, right. The next one is about, the group is around which focuses on gestating entities of gestating businesses and divesting businesses. Last but not the least is a very important thing which we are a part of, which Olam Technology and Business Services. And all of these operating groups are independent legal entities. And for us, Olam Technology and Business Services, two distinct verticals within that, technology and digital, and the global business services which I head. For us, we are a common thread that touches upon all of these operating groups, and each of them have their own CEO, right? They have a distinct, a very clear purpose. The strategic objectives are very different. The growth strategy, what they want to be in the next 5, 10 years are pretty different, independent. With that said, when I had these meetings with each of the CEOs and the leadership team, right, what really opened up? You have been sitting on a past glory, right? We have been supporting the group as a whole, right, the way it was structured earlier. But these new things that are coming up, the discussions with each of the leadership team opened up a lot of new things that we had to go after. See, this past glory is in a way a foundation, right? You can't just leave it and say, okay, I forget this. You need to stick on, and that is a given. But then that's the foundation for you to go after something new. I'll give you a few examples, right? In terms of the finance side of things, right? This Olam Food Ingredients is something that is getting listed in, or will get listed in the UK stock exchange, UK exchange and the Singapore exchange. So that opens up avenue in terms of looking at the UK reporting. That was something that we weren't doing. It's a very new thing, right? Picking up roles which they wanted in terms of assistant finance controllers, right? FPPP reporting, centralized audit, which we have been doing or supporting the erstwhile structure, but in the new structure it's all with the independent operating groups. When I looked at the supply chain side of things, the Olam Agri, they've got a freight business, right? So we had built up a lot of capability and expertise within container management, container freight management. So when I met the CEO of the food and feed business, he said, we do a lot of bulk shipments, and I'm talking about bulk shipment, one shipment is about $35 million, right? So he said, why can't you guys build a capability around this, right? I said, okay, it's not more of the same, more of the same, but something very new. So we said, okay, fine, we'll start building that capability which focuses on bulk shipment management and execution, which we had built an expertise around container management. And this helped us in terms of looking at something new, out of possible. We have not done that before. And our hybrid model of working, where we are able to reach out across India for these experts, also helped us. Olam Ventures, it's a startup mindset, right? Within the entire operating group, this is extremely different. They are divergent, they are disruptive. And again, the CEO basically said, look here, we want to just focus on our business. They got a whole set of new systems and platforms and everything. He said, you guys have done a lot for the organization as a whole. So please join us right from day one. You pick up all those which are the back office, middle office, and whichever way you want to ensure that my core is successful. Pick this up. Again, something new. I mean, we have not worked with a startup, right? But within the entire group, we had something which was operating like a startup. That was again art of possible. Yeah. Right? So I can keep giving a lot of examples.
Fantastic, GV. I was absolutely amazed at some of the interactive conversations that you've had with the leaders, especially in bringing in new thoughts and new insights into how you can create a different working business model for the business itself. Amazing, actually, because not very many business service centers, GBSs or whatever name you want to call them.
One thing, Sanjay, I just want to add one thing. See, this entire Ukraine crisis that we are going through, you won't believe that is opened up a new opportunity for us. Ethical business program, sanction screening. So we had to recruit people with the legal compliance background to basically help in sanction screening. And we call it this new avatar of ethical business program. Again, we were involved, something we haven't done before. That's again out of the possible.
I can't even begin to imagine what that will entail, but I'm sure Absolutely. It must be very interesting and very rewarding to get into something that is so core to the business in which your organization is. So I'll come back to you on that a little bit. But in the meanwhile, Sandeep, also in an industry which is unique in itself, Sandeep. So you have been running a center which has done many activities and strove and done a lot of interactive programs with the main, and already delivered so much of substantive value to the organization. So tell us, give us a moment and a short synopsis of the kind of interactive programs that you've run with your proximate customer, and also the conversations that you're having with your leadership, and how do I move forward and get deeper into their program. Sandeep.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I hope I'm audible. It's quite interesting to really see the practice that you have gotten, and of course, Lalita, you also mentioned about adoption of shared services. AkzoNobel also has been a late entrant into the world of shared services, and we have an opportunity to kind of look at a template which a lot of industry practitioners have already kind of experimented and experienced. So just a little background about AkzoNobel. We have $11 billion of revenue, largely into paints. And some of you who don't know what AkzoNobel is, I was speaking to some of you. We are the makers of Dulux paints globally. And we have a shared services center in Pune. Started 4 years ago, and very much we have a regional model as well. We have shared services center in North America, Brazil, Poland, China, Malaysia, and India. And India is a major global hub. To your point about the kind of conversation that we are having at this point of time, I think 4, 5, 6 years ago, there was a hostile bid to take over AkzoNobel globally. And that is where we realized that we need to really kind of strengthen our overall capabilities, and it is all there in the public domain. I think that's where we came with a strategy to really kind of transform our entire business. So we had a very clear operating model to bring in the entire systems upgradation, to look at the businesses as such, and then also leverage shared services in a hybrid model from day one. So typically we have a hybrid model. We do our own work as well as leverage third-party providers in IT and finance and supply chain as well. And I think it has augured very well for us because we had a template, we knew what we wanted. And in the last 4 or 5 years, we have been quite successful in a way. When I look back, the industry took 20 years to reach where it took, but we are pretty much there, at least if not, we can claim victory, but pretty much it's a good work in progress. So we do a lot of work today for our businesses, and the discussions are not just about very classical KPIs, SLA, and KRAs. We are a part of the entire group steering committee, and we talk about the entire business transformation. For example, last week we did a global town hall, and we talked about how we are also contributing to really look at the cost of finance as a metric, and how does really GBS really contribute to that. Of course, you have a different way of reporting and measuring it, but then looking at how can we also unlock working capital. Of course, KPIs and SLAs and KRS are given, and I think yesterday we were also talking about cost. I think cost is given, it's already there on the table, but how do you really improve the quality of conversations to be a part of the larger organization? And it is no more a front office or a back office or an integration of front or back office. I think it's probably one office, and I think that is the advantage that we had. I think I'm quite happy that we are probably discussing this. We were talking about the art of possible. So that would be my comment, and of course I'll come back later.
No, and absolutely, because this is an interesting thing. Saying if you're taking a commitment, saying that I'm going to make a dent in the cost of the organization, not the cost of the organization that I manage or control, but the entire organization. If that's a mandate that you're having with your leadership, then I think that's a fantastic thing to be a part of and to understand. So thanks for sharing. So now I'll go back to Dr. Sanjeev.
Yeah,
and
thank you,
Sanjeev, of course, veteran in this entire program, and has been, he's amongst, in fact, all of us, he's the only one who's in the services industry. Every one of us is doing some kind of a product management of some sort, but Sanjeev's the one whose product is an intellectual one. Now, Sanjeev, you're quite an artist in the art of possibles yourself. So one of the things I need to pick your brain is, how do you create an organization that is so integrated in the organization itself that to an external person, there is really no difference between what your center represents versus what the brand itself represents, right? So, Sanjeev.
Sanjay, a very good question. See, the industry is changing, and we are leapfrogging into a different paradigm. There are three things which when I started at Deloitte Shared Services, there are three themes which most of the organizations or GCs are moving towards. One is impact, outcome, and opportunities. And what is the impact on the organization, on the processes you have internally? So when you look at GCCs, whether you look at Workday, SuccessFactors, Blackline, Ariba, anything, so you have a clear impact on the processes as a GCC. And you drive this because that not only impacts your internal processes, your employees, but your stakeholders outside. So that's how the GCCs are creating an impact. Now I talk about outcomes. What your customer is looking at. Do I get the same value for the money? Do I get it cheaper? Do I get a cutting technology? Do the organization is providing us solutions? And in our case, we named it our center as Capability Enhancement Center because now the global talent sits in the GCCs, which are mature. And the talent is moving here, whether you talk about IT, whether you talk about procurement, supply chain, and the governance happens from the head office and all that. So there's a strategy, you are part of the strategy. The outcomes are delivered out of the center. And that's a very distinct change. So you are not measured on cost and arbitrage and the numbers, you are measured on the outcomes. So whether, what will be my cost of procurement on this? When we were looking at our supply chain, there was a recent case, payment terms. We had 0 payment terms, we had 15 payment terms, and we looked at how can we optimize our whole procurement, whole supply chain, right? So the discussions are much beyond your day-to-day routine processes and stuff. And the other important aspect which we need to know that GCCs are now part of the opportunities for the firm because there's a lot of acquisition, mergers, and technology being acquired. And you are smaller firms, so we are acquiring a lot of organizations ourselves to build our capability in our current organization. And GCC plays a key role to integrate those. So when you look at any mergers and acquisitions, if the GCC is not part of this, this will fail. And in my previous organization, we were trying to hive off one business. We couldn't do that because the systems were not ready and all that. And when the GCC came into picture, we had clear, distinct processes, clear, distinct capabilities, and we could manage that. So I think we look at now building capabilities. The focus has changed from cost to creating outcomes, business outcomes. You are discussing not only with CFOs, you may be a finance shared services, you are discussing with the CIO. And the biggest impact, I think most of our GCCs and my panelists here, is the whole digitization which is happening across the organization in various forms and shapes. And the capability and to drive that, that's happening from the GCCs. And it is at any level, whether you have just started your GCC, whether you are just, you need to digitize the organization, and that's the demand. Whether it is reporting, whether it is financial, whether you're bringing everything on the click of this. The recent examples we are doing is for Salesforce.com or bringing, and what the other thing is the GCCs is also changing the way the employees were interacting because most of the GCCs which we have here are spread across multiple countries. They are supporting organizations which are in multiple countries, etc. And GCC helps them to change the employee experience as well. Unless your employees are happy itself, and that's a value proposition they bring. So I would say impact, outcome, and opportunities, I think that's where the whole GCC and the next paradigm is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's absolutely wonderful, and it is an imperative as well because GCCs can contribute in so many ways without us realizing really how deep our influence can be. One of the things that we keep wondering about, and most of us, like even yesterday we polled and we found that we were pretty much a little tilted towards finance professionals, and in this industry we find that finance professionals are in a little more abundance than maybe other professionals. I would say more than average, but and that's in fact got a paradigm that gets fixed into our minds that value can only have one single dimensional meaning. And Sanjeev, to your point, it's not necessarily true all the time because when we think about value, we think about contribution to the business bottom line or contribution to the top line. So all we think about is what is the impact that we can make on the revenues and what is the impact that we can make on the EBITDAs of the world and the earning per share, etc. and all. And our mind gets clogged down by just that. However, value can be delivered in non-empirical numbers as well. Sorry, they are not numbers if they are not empirical. So non-empirical values, I would say. Some of them, for example, being, are you making a difference towards the customer experience? And by the way, here I'm not talking about my customer, which could usually mean the parent organization. Usually, it means the parent organization or the CFO or somebody else like that. but what impact can I possibly make in the ultimate customer, who in some cases can be used called the consumer, the person who is going to consume the product that your organization manufactures or sells or trades. So, if there are things and issues and objects that you can do now to make a difference to the life of the consumer or the customer, ultimate customer of the organization, that is value delivered. The final aspect of value delivered could be controls. Controls, governance. If there are elements that you can use to create an improved governance infrastructure, customer contact, customer delight, or customer service improvement, etc. If you would like to share, I mean, I can go around as well. If anybody wants to share that, how can GBS and what kind of thinking is going through people's minds and leaders' minds, saying that here are these 1, 2, 3 dozen activities that I can do, which ultimately will impact the customer's journey, interact with my organization. So, to that extent, improve brand management as well. So, do you want to, anybody, Lalita, you want to share?
I will just add to the points what you're talking about, value in terms of financial value or customer experience, but also I think controls is a great point what you made, Sanjay. But also an important thing which we should not forget is about our co-worker experience, our own employee experience. Because if you have a consistent employee experience, besides keeping the employees happy, the way how they can respond to the end consumers or end customers would also be consistent, right? A good part of the experience is the consistency in which you can analyze information, how you can present information, how you can pull out the things that the customers need is also very important. So, I would, to the equation what you talked about, I would also add the value of bringing consistent co-worker experience as well.
No, I think that's a great observation, Lalita. And maybe we need to think more in terms of not just customers as liars, or they could, etc., but building a relationship framework and giving experience and a wonderful experience even to, so that's a human experience, that one of the things that we talk about is this element which we call combining human intelligence with artificial intelligence. So, while digital is a progress that we undertake as a journey, but the emotional attachment to the organization by humans is not to be undermined, absolutely. So, yeah, going back to the value add, both in terms of customer as well as in, if any, building controls, building a better governance infrastructure, stuff like that. Any of you would like to contribute? GV first, you?
Yeah, maybe I've got a couple of examples, but I will start with this one, which I think Ravi also mentioned in terms of this whole Africa, supporting Africa,
yeah.
right?
Oh, you have a very good equation with Africa, yeah.
It's one of the largest business continents that we have, typically on the origination side of things, from where we are getting the produce, right? So, when we in fact started to move work from Africa, I would say back in 2016, I will kind of touch upon all these aspects of arbitrage, value delivery, moving up the value chain, commitment, and this intelligence part, right? So, the purpose of this work to be migrated was not arbitrage at all, absolutely, right? But it was more to do with controls, compliance, the risk quotient, and people who have worked in Africa, there's a high level of fraud that happens, right? There's a reason behind why we wanted to kind of move work into the GBs and build those controls and compliance, able to reduce the negative flow of money happening, right? That way was basically hitting the savings also. So, what we then learned over these last 3-4 years in terms of working the entire Africa thing is, yeah, from a cost we started, the arbitrage was negative. We were able to move it to neutral, then eventually into cost positive, right? So, now it is a combination. For example, if I talk about an AFC role from an Africa context, with all of these operating groups, all of them have a presence in Africa. So, it's a homogeneous to heterogeneous business models that you are working with. But our primary focus has been more in terms of value delivery. Right? Ravi again was talking about yesterday, you might have a resource for whom you are paying $20,000, $50,000 or whatever it is. But then what value you are able to bring back to the business using that resource, if it was seated in the origin, could be an expat, because you have an access, shortage of talent in Africa. So you pay through your nose in terms of your, what you need to pay them. The annual saving potential is something very high that you have to pay. But then if that resource sitting out here is able to give that value back to the Africa businesses, and that is what they want. And what we have learned is how you can start by being cost neutral from arbitrage and make it cost positive, which we were able to. So, the knack of how you could do it. So, today when we are moving work, we look at it in all dimensions. So, you want an arbitrage, I will try and start neutral, we will make it positive. You want value delivery, we will give you the value delivery, because that is what you always wanted. I think to us, about 350 people supporting Africa is a big thing. And that is a classic art of possible, because I don't think there are many players who are supporting Africa. But you just focus on arbitrage, right?
Yeah, no, great. Yeah, sorry. So, yours is a product which is highly consumer oriented, right? So, I'm keen in knowing, those aspects of the organization that ultimately result in a benefit of some sort to the guy who's painting his house. At the end of the day, that's what your customer is. So, because I believe that till such time you have reached you have not reached a stage where you can create a value for that guy who's buying paint to paint his house. If we can create an environment, and I'm not saying we need to be there today or there needs to be there. What I'm saying is, are we thinking in those lines? Is that an art of possible at all, anywhere? So, sorry, anything you can contribute?
Sure, and I was just kind of thinking about when you talked about how can we really enable better governance, how can we really enable better control. And I think as I was sharing earlier, once we are able to clean our data and once we are able to really get to a stage where I think we have a structured information, I think we're trying to kind of enable our colleagues, our employees and our colleagues in different centers and different locations to know about the numbers and have a better finance discipline. For example, every month there was a need that we don't have enough information to make decisions, right? So we are pushing data, for example, who are your people who are reporting to you on every month? What is your travel wallet? Who are the people who are having access to your systems? So giving those kind of information to really make sure that we have a better control and governance is also very, very important. And I think once we are able to really put the entire systems together, it was quite easy for us to do it in an automated fashion. And I think that's something which really helps us to really kind of manage the business in a little bit of where there's no risks. We don't have any surprises at the end of the year. We know where the numbers look like. I think that's really worked very well for us.
Yeah. No, good. I think that finding a niche is also so important, that's a great way. And like you said, that to a certain extent, your center is it's a recent one, and you've certainly reached levels where you've started to make an impact towards the organization commitment and goals, etc. So, over to you, Sanjeev, and in your experience, how can the aspects of consumer life improvement, customer life improvement, I'm sorry, and organizational maybe improved controls, governance. So, nowadays there is a lot of conversation about environmental, and we should be talking sometime about how GBSs can, or business services as a group, can improve awareness and outcome in the environmental studies, but maybe for some other time.
Sanjay, so I think as the industry is involved and the centers are involved, whatever we do in the center impacts the final consumer of our services, whether it is vendors, debtors, procurement, supply chain, and finally the user of our products and services. And what as the organizations have done, especially in GCC, they look at how we can standardize and bring a platform which creates a uniform experience for the customers, and that's important. And what we have done in Deloitte and Syngenta as well is that how many touches a customer or a vendor has with us and how much complexity it creates to answer that query in simple things. So what's happening is, and I can predict in 2025, I'm working on a project where most of our processes will get automated. It will be a no-touch process. Whether it is through RPA, whether it is through automation, transformation, and that's going to come, especially some of the areas which has a direct impact on your suppliers and vendors, and that also changes the payment terms when you are negotiating, because you are delayed your payments, and the next time the supplier is very angry because that's the experience they get. So you are moving towards a no-touch experience. You have vendor portals now, you have bots now, so as soon as the vendor has submitted his invoice, he wants to know where is my payment, where is my invoice stuck. He has an option to go and look at it himself rather than going to multiple touches. So that creates a very good experience. Now look at a farmer. He wanted to know how much pesticide I should distribute, and I don't have labels in Japan and something else. So we went back to the customers and said, what should we do? I said, bring in technology. So that's how the drones came into the agriculture, right? They started, so you get a drone who takes $100 to spread over 4 acres of this thing, because you have an aging farmer of 65 years in Japan where you don't have labor. So you need to come with a solution, create a different experience for them, right? Your product was pesticide and not drones, but you had to create and go out of the way to create a customized solution to make him happy. And you worked with the IT providers who could create drone for you, and not you yourself, you have to develop it itself. So it is an encompassing thing. You need to look at what customer wants. Are you able to deliver and give him what he wants for the value of money? And that's happening in my current organization with Deloitte as well. When we go to the customer, we tell him that, are you looking at the problem, or are you looking at a solution which addresses your concerns as an organization and fixes those issues, right? So I think no touch is going to be, and taking feedbacks. So we do a survey as soon as our service is done, that how well the service was received by you, where are the parameters we can improve. Unless there's a to and fro feedback mechanism and interaction, you'll never be improving your services. Because I can always be inward looking, but we need to be outward looking and getting a feedback. And that's important for GCCs to impact, whether it is an internal stakeholder. So any service I do for my client service team, whether it's a tax return, whether it's an audit scheduling or anything else, I take a feedback so that I can go back to my executive and tell them this is the next time you need to improve. So ultimately it impacts the customer. So customer remains the king. GCCs are going to play a major role, whether it's a transformation, automation, and we are moving towards a no-touch processes. And that's the reality, because that will further improve your customer experience to a larger extent.
In fact, I'm able to relate to what Sanjeev said on the drone part, right? So we got plantations in Gabon, right, and about 40,000 hectares. You cannot just have humans trying to spray those insecticides or pesticides, right? So we use drones, and our digital team is part of the technology and business services. They help in how do you control those drones, what kind of reports come out of it, what is the stage of each of those the palm plantations which are there, right? So I think able to relate to how technology is revolutionizing in almost all the areas, including farming.
No, absolutely. And I think these are fantastic examples on how the services and the business services groups can actually contribute towards making the life of not only the frontline employee engage with the customers, but also the customer's life itself. Because sometimes many of us go ahead to believe that I have no relationship with the customer and the customer is too far removed from me, or the front line is too far removed from me. My relationship continues to remain only with my customer, which is the parent organization or a unit of the parent organization. So that sometimes becomes a constraint to say, can you think? And therefore the whole point about art of possibles and importance for us to understand one aspect, and that is, so long as the customer wants something and we provide what the customer wants, it is an expectation from the customer, and we are great in fulfilling the expectations of the customer, even if it is going out of the way. My question is, and right now I'd like you to think about a little bit, throw your fantasies as far away as you can possibly think, stretch imagination, say, how about getting into a role where we contribute to the organization where even the customer doesn't know what he wants from us? And very often we are able to provide insight or at least a dialogue with the customer and say, though you have not asked me for this, but I can provide this. And because this is not a question that has maybe have a scripted answer or something that you may have thought out, but you're leaders. And what I'm asking you as leaders and leaders of the businesses that you run, do you want to share any examples of things that you may not even have done, but you can, and think about what is it that you can contribute to the customer even before the customer comes up and asks you, just because you really know the business and engage with the business, so effectively. So open. Anybody?
I can take a shot.
Yeah, absolutely.
This happened with my previous organizations a couple of years back. So in India, if you see, there are more than 400 million farmers, right? And that's a number we have because they are very small farmers. Average holding is less than an acre, if you look at. So we were struggling when we were going to them. There were non-standard practices of using pesticides, mixing them, even the seeding practices and all that. And they didn't know when to use the right mix, when to go and do this. So a lot of our people, when they were going on the field and they were looking at, so there are other players who sell the same price for a whatever price point. But the whole thing was building that knowledge. So we created an app which is in 11 languages now. It's on a smartphone because 90% of the farmers had a smartphone. And this app would tell you when you done the seeding, when you need to do the pesticide, if these are the symptoms, then you can send the picture and we'll diagnose and send to you which pesticide to use. So it was a connect. You don't need to be connected to them virtually or anything else, but you had scientists seeing in them. We were monitoring when he has seeded, what pesticide he needs to do. He was getting an alarm. So we had 27 million apps being downloaded in less than 6 months. So that was a success. That not only added creating a brand value for the firm, but also helped to connect with the farmers, understand their challenges, and then go back. And there were many enhancements. So we came version 3 in less than 6 months because the feedback was coming. So you can go and find solutions working with the customer. It's not that something which was required to be given an app. There's no requirement. We sell pesticide, we sell seeds. That's how it is. But that's how you create an edge for the organization and a brand, and that's how you create awareness of the people. So I think these are clear examples where you can do that.
I think the agriculture industry seems to be dominating this conversation. Great examples we have from the agriculture industry. And you're talking about the experience on your past organization.
Yes, Sanjay.
I just want to state one thing here. When you said, right, how do you influence, right, whether it's your back office, middle office or front office, right, but there's an expectation which is coming from all the GBSs, at least I can say very clearly, right. You say you have done all of this is again the past glory, right, but now you want to have a seat on the table. What is it that you're going to, how is it that you're going to influence? You need to tell me. I'm not going to ask you, but you need to tell me how you're going to influence, right. So typically now there are a lot of task forces in these different operating groups in which we have a presence, right. But it's not about strategy at the end of the day. See, what they believe is today at a certain level, right, leadership, we are all thinking, yeah, we all have thinkers, but I want people who will execute them for me on the ground. I need to convert it into something that will be happening on the ground, which is where that entire thought process of how do we execute it, convert that to something which is on the ground and it is, realizable. That's where the role is coming in for all our folks, right, as part of those task forces. We are involved in, the strategy and all of that is great, but you have a lot of thinkers there, but I want that to be translated. So we basically tell them how this can be translated and what's the role that GBSs can play. That I have been, seen happening, interacting with each of these different operating groups, that they want us to be a part of those task forces, helping them out as to how this will get converted to something on the ground. We got a vision, but it can't just stay as a vision. We need that to be executed on the ground. It becomes a reality. That is where we guys step in. That's something which is really picking up, and which is where the real art of the possible is coming up, not just in
Speak to your organizations, especially in as far as interaction with your leadership and conversations with your leadership is concerned, about what is it that the centers or GBS centers can possibly do. I think that's a conversation that in many places has already begun and gone very many places, like some of us shared, but many of us obviously must be thinking about these lines as well, significantly. So before we go ahead and ask questions, I'm sure there will be several.
We've started some glimpses of that. I think after movement of all the work to shared services, there is little or very less or not a good talent at a good cost. So I think GBSs can really become the talent factory for the organization.
Yeah.
And somebody who's worked in GBS has access to so much cross-functional data, information and cultures. I think that can be a real winner for an organization, that if you've worked in GBS, I think you're probably there and you can really play a very large role in the organization.
Yeah,
I think that can be a
talent factory.
talent factory.
Right.
I think, you know, yesterday also we talked about it
Yeah.
is no longer about just the baselining, but it is about benchmarking. So I think even in our organization, the conversation have been extensively about not measuring the GBS by the KPIs or SLAs, which is, as you rightly mentioned, hygiene factors, Sanjay, but it is about how do you really do an end-to-end KPIs, or how do you do an end-to-end metrics which is externally benchmarked, how do you take the organization there, what role can GBS play in influencing that metrics for, you know, across the process value chain has been consistently conversations at our end.
Wonderful, absolutely, and that's exactly what is required really, because it is those conversations that bring out these nuggets of what contribution our organization can provide. And many times even the client's organizations get restricted by what your mandate is. And what we are trying to say over here, that the days when our mandates were defined are over. We need to really create organizations where you are not shackled down, and that's one essential difference. So there are several, but one essential difference between organizations that are internal, so GBSs of the world for that matter, versus outsourced organizations who really run on mandates. Outsourced organizations are required to run on mandates. That is why they are outsourcing partners, though many of them have broken those shackles as well. But the essential idea of outsourcing is that here is something you do it this way and just finish with it, which is not the mandate that, you know, GBS is.
But I think most of the hybrid organizations like ours, where we have, there is an outsourced or the strategic partner piece, but it is always part of your end-to-end value chain.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that the, you know, your internal stakeholders don't have to really bother about things, where you keep the totality, whether it's a part of, and those conversations are changing as well. Sanjay.
Yeah, sorry, Sanjay.
So Sanjay, one issue we are all grappling with is attrition. So, and whatever brand we are, attrition is happening, right? So whether it is Deloitte or anything, it may be lower or higher, but attrition is happening, right? And what customers is looking at a uniform experience and a consistent and sustainable delivery, right? And I'm in a professional services firm, which is human capital only.
Yeah.
So, and then the knowledge retention, service delivery becomes a big challenge. So now we are using technology, we are using strong processes to undermine that. This does not impact us negatively from a customer perspective, because somebody else who was working on a project suddenly left.
Yeah.
And we don't know where it is. And that's going to impact us, because even for GBS and anything we do for our parents, suddenly they say there's a dip in accounts payable, there's a dip in invoices being paid late, or errors are happening. So I think one of the important things we expect is that we need to build a knowledge factory within the organization, and process training becomes a big role.
Yeah.
So what we have done, we have changed the paradigm that we are hiring freshers now, and we are not making them tax experts. We are saying a tool will train you to make sure that when you come in, our time to production is much reduced, and then you are less prone to errors, because the customer is not going to forgive you. Because he sees you as a brand, and he sees you a certain value coming from you for that price point.
Yeah.
And
So
that's another challenge which we are facing, and we are going to face.
It's very
for the next
interesting,
couple of
no?
years.
Because there are a lot of things about saying the future is unpredictable. What do I train my current generation so that they become ready for the next generation? And here is Sanjeev and, you know, several others like they were saying, don't train them with anything. Don't make them tax experts. I have all that expertise within me. Just train them to become adaptable to whatever I put in front of them. And that is the important change that I see, you know. No need for us to put expertise into. That's also a paradigm, and, you know, we'll get into that some other time maybe, but that's a very real paradigm shift that one needs to put. So we're running out of time, I know, and there could be many conversations, but questions, ladies and gentlemen, are welcome. We don't have too much of time, so, you know, I'm putting the pressure screws already, saying questions, but we'd welcome questions, because that helps clarify our minds as well. So anybody wants to ask a question. I promise, Sanjeev, we are not going to grill you, but I don't think there are too many questions coming to us.
Yeah, that's two.
Anyone? Hand the mic over. There's one mic here. I don't think we need this as well. Okay.
So I think one point that we have put very, extremely here in terms of...
Do you want to introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah. So my name is Ankit. I am representing Westman Global Services. The last point that we were talking about, hiring fresher talent, giving them a training where they can adopt anything or, put them into any process that they can adapt. So do we have any roadmap or any training path where we can align resources on? Because, in general, when we hire anyone in terms of shared service model, we have a set training plan. And throughout their training plan, they have to go through certain process, AP, AR, GL. But as such, what training should we give to our talent to make them future ready? That's the bigger question that I have on the table.
I'm sorry, who's the question for?
Anyone who can answer.
I think you should answer it.
Right, thank you. Yes.
Okay, so I think there are simple things which we have done. So we have an in-house program called Cura, right? So we track the life cycle of the employee in training, irrespective of the level he joins. It could be at AM, executive, senior executive, and whatever level. For freshers, what we have done is, you go through the mandatory training on certain tools which are mandatory to use any of this. For example, in tax, we provide services on transfer pricing, GS, employee services, GST, IDT, direct taxes and all that. So your first life cycle for the entire tools and everything is common across. And then you get into specialization because then transfer pricing will require research and all that stuff. But then within 2 to 3 weeks, I call high tax doing the tax factory work. But there's an employee return which is 31st July, there's a corporate return which is August and all that. So we are able to manage the resources and train them within 2 weeks to get into the other process. And that's the power of the tool. So that it's a self-learning tool. You go through this, you go through the online assessment, and you keep going back, and there's a buddy. There's an online buddy and a floor buddy, right? So you need to make it more process-oriented. You need to define the roadmap for that process training.
Yeah.
That's how it will sustain. Otherwise, it won't. Because every month you are onboarding 60, 70, 80 people, and you don't know how they're getting trained.
Yeah.
So if you have a human training and human assessment, that will not sustain.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sanjeev, I'm reminded of this one statement Dr. Mohan Reddy made yesterday. It was fantastic. Humans will only do which only humans can do.
Right, yeah.
It's a fantastic statement. So if it can be done by a technology tool, then the technology will take it over and humans will be required to do only the humans.
And I can share more details with you after. not to sell Deloitte, but I can share offline. Yeah.
Sorry, I found there was one more question who was coming up. Yeah. Sorry.
So this is Gaurav Raizada. I represent SCCBPL here. So my question is, when we are talking about, art of possible, we are saying, there would be a group of, as BSS, GBS, we should, impact consumers or customer, as in the case. And Sandeep has shared some examples that, how they are making it, how they are solving issues for their group companies and those things. But let's talk about a typical GBS. There are, around 350, 500 kind of a people who are on a day-to-day basis working on their own process. Maybe, just a invoice processing, maybe just a procurement kind of a thing. How do we give a sense of accomplishment on how for these people so that they understand that, where their work is contributing, how their work is contributing towards making life of customer or consumer better. So for me, how I am contributing towards, freshness of Coke, finally. So how do I link?
So, is there a question specific for someone or?
Anybody can answer.
Yeah, sorry.
I think I got just reminded of a very recent example that we did during COVID, and we ran a campaign across GBS across 6 countries, and we called it I Matter campaign, right? And each and every analyst across the organization said that how do I contribute to the organization? And it started with the CFO saying that, why do I matter? And it went on. So somebody says, what, I raise a purchase order on time, and that helps really vendor supplying raw materials on time. I make the journal entry on time. So everybody really, contributed to the value of the organization, how they are making a difference, and it really became a good rage, and everybody in the organization really appreciated that. So there are ways and means where you can really entrust your employees, your colleagues, and tell that how you can really make a big difference in the organization. Does that answer your question? What you're looking at?
I just possibly want to add on. To what you were also saying is, if you need to make your employees understand how they are contributing, I think it should start right when they join your organization. Very importantly, when you have a training plan which is set, right? One important key aspect or lever should be understanding the business. You just don't come, you process an invoice, you process a purchase order, right? But when you do that, how does it impact the entire chain which is involved?
Yeah.
I think part of your training when somebody comes in is knowing about the business. When you do something, how does it kind of impact the entire organization? The entire value stream of that should be conveyed to that person. Then they will understand how they are impacting the larger organization, right? You can run these multiple sessions and all of that, but I think fundamentally when the training happens, these guys need to understand the process and the business nuances behind it.
Very good example, JV. Okay, so now in the interest of time, we'll may I request you to keep your conversation privately over this thing, because discuss offline. All of us are available for conversations at any time. So thank you very much. This has been a really rewarding conversation. I have learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone here has picked up nuggets from the leaders. The intention really is to try and see where we draw our line and how we can extend that line and say that really there isn't a line, and we are at equal liberty to be a part of the larger organization and contribute to things that matter to the organization, not only to my control, but areas of influence rather than areas of control. So thank you very much, and thank you for being a really patient group. And we hope to hear from you on this topic. Questions at any time are invited. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanjay, and all the very eminent panelists. It was a great discussion, and to thank and reward all of you, may I request Sanjay to give mementos to GV. And to Sandeep. Request Rakesh to please come and give a memento to Lalita. And to Sanjeev. Thank you very much, all the panelists and Sanjay. Sanjay, actually, you could stay back. Yeah. Yeah. Moving on, the next session is Research Insights, the rise of business services centers, and the two persons who are going to deliberate on this, Rakesh Sinha, Sanjay Gupta, Research Insights.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Once again, very good morning. I think Sanjay's session was so interesting and so engrossing that we went 22 minutes overboard on the time. So I literally have 8 minutes between myself and Sanjay to talk about it, and we'll ensure we finish on time at 11:30 so that there is no delay to the coffee, right? So exactly 8 minutes, Sanjay, 4 minutes talking time to you and 4 minutes to me, right?
Of which 7.5 yours, Rakesh.
Oh, is it? Okay. So I think just to quickly set the context and the ball rolling, yesterday you would have seen, many of you were there, would have seen as a part of the ethos of Shared Services Forum, we went ahead and brought another framework called the RISE. And this is all about seeing how we can go to the NextGen business services centers. And this is the framework which will be very shortly available on your tables. This is a bit of Janam Patri stuff here type, and you can always see this. Quick few points I want to talk about. I think there's some common myths when it comes to talking about where we are in terms of our maturity. And actually we were trying to build this entire thing, and over last few months, we might have had more than 80 odd conversations with the GBS, GIC leaders, and they were talking a lot of an interesting conversation on a different extreme of maturity. A lot of myths very much clearly came out. I think some of the myths, if I have to pick very clearly in terms of their maturity, is they are talking about we are delivering on SLAs, we are green, and so we have done whatever we are supposed to do as a part of our commitment, or we have done, as even Sanjay and the panel before was talking about, that we have delivered value through arbitrage. Now, what was your contribution? The arbitrage happened, right? Because of the processes. Or very clearly talking about that we are making contribution to the bottom line by doing FT optimization. Now, what is that commitment? It is again something which is part of the life now in terms of looking at it. So, some of these myths, I'll say, became very important when you look at the maturity, and I think it's very contextual. I think when GV was talking about, some of this is very contextual. What is your past glory, where you are in your journey, and the reference to the art of possible basically starts from there. So this myth still sometimes colors your mind to remain in where you are, right, in terms of the past glory, and not take that step forward to the art of possible for some of the organization, I believe. For example, I'm just picking one more example. We have no role to play in value delivery. It's all the prerogative of the head office. So they will tell us what to do, we'll do it. Right? Some of these are, I think Sanjay, you want to pick anything in the midst?
No, absolutely, Rakesh. And being a finance professional, one hears this, and a GBS professional, one hears this all the time, saying that all that I was to contribute has already been contributed either through cost arbitrage or through process efficiency. And there is only so much you can squeeze out of process efficiency, and we have reached a pinnacle where efficiency has reached a very high level, and there is only marginal benefit that we can get out of that. So FT rationalization, for example, becomes a very big thing. And when we talk about GBS centers as independent value delivery centers or contributors, there are a lot of people who begin to say, and they say, oh, we already have transfer pricing. Do you have a P&L? We ask a GBS. Do you have a P&L? Can you give us whether you are making profits or you may be making losses, I'm not, but are you having a P&L? Do you have control on your expenses and your incomes? Do you even have revenue streams? Yeah, our revenue streams are transfer pricing streams. And that, in fact, is a very, very big myth, and a lot of us professionals get locked into that, they get blocked into it, and that becomes our limiting factor. But there is so much that one can actually do. There are several other myths that we can talk about. Technology is one very big myth. There are a lot of people who believe that technology is the ultimate answer to every problem that you can have. So you have a problem, put technology. And therefore, a metric that people have is, I have 20 bots, I have 30 bots, and you have only 7, you are inferior. So there is a big myth around what bots is, what technologies are, and how technologies need not necessarily be the answer to every problem that the organization
Same way,
faces.
like yesterday we talked about the capability and of the center is what used to be measured by the number of FTEs. I have a 200 people or a 2,000 people, so somebody having a 2,000 people in the shared services more capable and matured. I think that gone are the days. Similarly, if you're talking about I have 70 bots versus somebody having 2 bots, I think gone are the days when talking about that is a level of maturity. So it can't be measured on the number of technology you have deployed. It is the multiple other dimension basis which you can really measure your maturity. I think that's That's where we came out with this, what is this business services maturity? Because everybody has to have a reference to the context by saying where we are. And I think again going back to the point which even think GB was talking earlier about, by saying, you know, you have to see where you are in your journey. Like when Lalita was saying we are a late entrant, but we had a lot of this past available thanks to other industry information. So I think there is a reference which you need to bring in to this maturity model. For business services, we have evolved and put 5 levels of L1 to L5 as a maturity model. L1 starting with what we call as a process center. So are you a process center? And we have given some connect to that in the next page, saying, okay, what it means in terms of capability, what it means in terms of collaboration, what it means in terms of commitment, and what it means of in terms of a competitive advantage. So you could be a process center, service center, value center. You are delivering a lot of values in terms of EBITDA impact, P&L impact, etc., etc. You are a strategic center. You have really become a strategic partner to the business and delivering more value through a value potential, institutionalized way, and so on and so forth. Or you have become a unified organization at the enterprise center, literally working with the board, if I had to say, and not just running like a business services organization. So every organization has an opportunity to move up the value chain. If you're already an enterprise center, and basis of about 80 odd conversation I'm just talking about, we felt that few are in the value center. There could be about 3.5. We found a lot in the midst of 2.5 to 3. There could be one which is around 4, and so on and so forth. So we see there's an opportunity for many of the GBSs or the GCCs to really take that leap to the strategic center and enterprise center. Again, there's a connect to this 4 C's. We're talking about collaboration and capability is very much foundational. Commitment and competitive advantage which has to come, and we have given a framework called RISE, R-I-S-E, it's an acronym, and saying how you can take that leap to a strategic center or enterprise center. So R, as you can see, is all about reimagining value potential. I think a lot of discussions were happening just before and in the last panel about value. We have brought in drones, etc., etc. It's about visualizing it once again now, and part of your business services goal, which is very clearly linked to the enterprise goals. So start connecting that dot as an important thing. I is a very important item again here. It's not about intent. A lot of time we have heard about that. We have an intent. We will deliver this. We have a KPI, KR, etc. Have you institutionalized this? And institutionalization means you need to have a guiding principle, guidance document. You need to have artifacts, and it has to be matured over a few months at a time. So guidance document in the place. I have a written procedural to that. So that level of procedurals you have created, goals you have created, and finally you also have an artifacts to support that. Synthesize strategic deployment and ecosystem. A lot of ecosystem available. We discussed even yesterday about the ecosystem. We talked about how to leverage that power of ecosystem. But it's very critical to see there are multiples. One of the terms I like to bring up from yesterday was about transformation to metamorphosis. In fact, about 5 years back, we talked about digital metamorphosis much before the digital was like a big term. So we said it's not about one transformation. Metamorphosis is a series of transformation. Similarly, we are talking about here synthesizing multiple deployments, the strategic deployments. You may have some deployments happening at one place and so on and so forth, how it is connected back to the enterprise goals and strategy, and also leveraging the ecosystem. You are not reinventing the wheel. I think Lalita was talking about, you are not reinventing the wheel. You should be able to leverage the ecosystem. Competitive advantage we have tried to define in the next page, talking about what is the various dimensions where you can see the competitive advantage delivered by business services, either being a strategic center or enterprise center, which has to connect to multiple aspects of enterprise. It could be multi-geographies, multi-business, multi-functions, and so on and so forth. It is not about one function. It is not about one processes. How you really become wider and deeper, enterprise-wide, looking at just not the upstream, but multi-streams, if I have to say, as a part of the entire thing. So this is a quick RISE framework, and we can talk more about it in the breaks as well. Sanjay, want to talk about this, the 5 levels and connect?
Yeah. So I'll not go through every one of them, so don't worry. Long conversations, hours and hours of conversation over weeks and months, and in fact started maybe about a year ago or so. About what this represents. So Rakesh talked about 5 levels, and we tried to put some kind of parameters around these 5 levels to see if we can parameterize them, because all of us are left-brained accountants. So we always like to talk about frameworks in a frame, and therefore we've created a frame where we've put the levels up and saying, if there are 5 levels that we can establish, and what is the meaning of the word competitive advantage or competitive edge. Like I mentioned in the previous session, competitive edge value is provided even by the most basic guy. The minute a particular center is set up, value is being contributed. Though Rakesh of course has just said that there is very little we could have done. It is a natural phenomenon. So, there is a natural arbitrage that happens, especially if you are bringing in from an expensive center to a cheaper center. However, arbitrage happens even if you are not necessarily bringing it from an expensive center, but rationalizing FTEs, etc. Those are value provided. So, there is a name that we have set up to the center, we call it a processing center, where the job is to process the function or to process the activity in the defined characteristic as it was originally being done. So, if you brought it into a center from maybe a parent organization, do the thing that parent organization was doing, and so long as you are keeping that alive, there is process delivery that is happening. So, we call it process center, and the 2 elements that Rakesh was also mentioning about collaboration and capability are also moving up the chain as the centers move up. So, at a process level, the collaborative level is of a provider. So, basically we are then created a center where we are providing a service. The commitment is only to deliver the process and to create at best defined standard documentation, and that is where that level is. As you move up the service levels, the center becomes a partner, because here now you are contributing and engaging a lot more as a partner to the customer, and the commitment changes. The commitment not only becomes appropriate service levels, but improved service levels. Do as I say rather than do as I do, and that change, mindset change, is the first step in making a professional service. And then creating a process optimization program where the processes are done to the best of their ability, as we understand, and delivery towards our customer is the commitment that we make. As we move up, we create a level called value center. Now, value center is the one which Rakesh was saying creates the most confusion, because now you are engaging with the business as a partner. So, your collaboration is with the business, and the commitment becomes very different. The commitment becomes whether your center is also a contributor to value or to the financial value. So, are you making profits? Now, many of us service people believe that we are not required to make any profits, but that is not necessarily true. So long as you keep getting yourself fixed in transfer pricing, for those of us who are from, let us say, international centers, this makes a lot of, it is a headache and a big problem as well. But if that is what our intention is, then we will never ever become a profit center. To become a profit center, full control of costs. So many of us sometimes also fail to understand what costs are, because if you look at yourself as a cost center, then you will only think of proximate costs. Everything else is an allocation from head office, but that is not necessarily how profit centers work.
Just a point to add here on the value center, and this is where we have a lot of conversations with the GCCs, and we found that somehow there is an impression that we have reached a pinnacle by being at a value center, right? And that is where again connecting back to the myths which we are talking about. Like for example, if I am a global process ownership is in the GBS or GCC, does not makes you still become a strategic asset or a strategic center or enterprise partner. Still you are a value center, and now the global process ownership is a good capability. We are saying now from a collaboration and capability, you have to move beyond that to make sure those commitments and competitive edge is also delivered to truly become a value center. And this is where we found that a lot of centers are in the range of 2.7, 2.8, not even 3, because they may have that capability, but that commitment and competitive edge is something which is an opportunity. By saying how to look at those make versus buy is a simple point. Is GBS taking that call of make versus buy, or still the headquarters is talking about make versus buy, is again a commitment and a maturity movement to say you are a level 3 or value center. Back to Sanjay.
Yeah, thanks Rakesh. So that's when we call ourselves a value center, I mean, these are names that we've sort of coined along the way because we best fit names. We move on to the next level and we call it that strategic center. And this is at a place where the organization has reached a certain level of maturity to be a strategic contributor. Now, the definition of a strategic contributor is very simple. Are you making a dent to the ROI of the company, or the EBITDA of the company, or the revenue of the company, or a cash flow kind of a arrangement, and not just your own? I am not talking about area of control here. So, here is where you are making a shift and saying from area of control to area of influence. You are taking on the, for those of us who are finance, I am sorry, we all think only finance unfortunately, but for all of us who think, can you think CFO? Are you a CFO of some sort, and are you a kind of a CFO role, and for that matter a business role, and contributing to the organizational top line and bottom line? And that is the kind of change of thought that leaderships are in GBSs are bringing in.
Just a quick point to add. I think one is Sanjay keeps talking about a finance professional. So as you all know, I am not one. So I will try to bring a different perspective, right? So so typically even talent is a very important thing in terms of looking at from a business services. Have you become a talent hub for a global organization? So have you become a talent hub where you are producing talents, which is not just about movement, intra-movement and so on and so forth, but about globally organizations are looking forward to have that kind of a talent. Now, that is a capability which is very important, but how are you committing, again going back to the business, by saying you need 10 leaders, we will produce 10 leaders from the GBS tomorrow, right? And that is the commitment. You have to go beyond the capability. Even there is a very thin line, and as you can see from a value center and strategic center, because many would say, oh, we already strategic center because we deliver value. A cash flow impact, we do it. EBITDA impact, we do it. Are you doing it as a part of incidental which is happening, or is it part of your value potential, which is a structured method which you have? You have gone ahead with the CFO, as Sanjay was saying, agreed that I will give you 2% of your bottom line impact in this country next year. Right?
By design.
By design.
Yeah.
It's not that, okay, I will analyze something and I'll say, okay, something is available and we'll figure it out and we'll give you something, and whatever we passed on, it becomes an opportunity as a value story, versus by saying, I will work with you and figure it out what I can deliver and so on and so forth. Really working with those market and ecosystem and so on and so forth.
Right. Yeah. So, a quick correction, I am an accountant for sure by profession and learning, but major part of my life was done outside of accounting. So, thank you very much, including HR, by the way. So,
Yeah.
So, anyhow, no, I am just breaking a myth, Rakesh.
I know.
Now, moving ahead, one of the things that we can think about right now in saying, how do organizations who have reached the strategic level make an even greater impact within the organization? Can ever GBS organization and the GBS group become a part of a board level conversation? Is it strategic enough? Let us say business units. You have independent business units, every one of them has a representation on the board. Every one of them has a contribution to make to the board and the fortunes of the board. They are discussed at the board level at great depth, because that is what the function of a board is supposed to be. Is GBS ever a part of that conversation? Do the board members have conversations about what is the progress of the GBS center and what is the contribution of the GBS center? That is a level that we are required to really be at, to be able to call ourselves enterprise centers, and that is what our aim is. We call it the board level. Either it could be a board member itself, or it could be a person who is reporting into the board so that there is enough gravitas within the organization, the GBS organization, to be important enough for that. But what is the commitment and competitive edge that you can say? Can the organization become a force multiplier? So one of the things that we keep talking about and saying, say for example, taking up an initiative and creating a corporate, enterprise-wide initiative out of it. Even a thing like Rakesh mentioned, think like a talent factory, and saying, can I become a contributor to say that I am bringing in professional talent, which will then become an essential part of leadership deployment the world over? all leaders have to necessarily put in 1 year or 2 or 3. Like for example, there are a lot of people who say that you cannot really ever become a leader unless you have an international exposure in 2 or 3 fields that you can well define. A lot of companies have this as a part of their mandate, that you cannot become a leader or you can't become a leader beyond a certain level unless you have these 2 things, 3 things. Can a stint in the GBS be a part of those 2 things or 3 things? That could make a very good talent story as a contributor from the GBS point of view.
Maybe you can connect, Sanjay, on the strategic advantages or competitive advantages.
Examples have been given in there, and saying, how do we define, are there any indicators to say what kind of a level? And we've given indicators only at the strategic center, as a strategic center and the enterprise center, because anything other than that can be actually really huge. To give you an example, a GBS organization initiative which improves speed to market, how quickly can a particular product be turned around, and how quickly can a particular initiative be turned around and created into deployment. If that is something that we are contributing to as a strategic partner, that makes a difference. However, if we can expand the market itself and say that can I do anything particular which improves the market for me, either in terms of product differentiation or by whether there is an improved availability of marketplace, then that makes an enterprise center. And that's where that one small distinction we're trying to say. So long as we are talking about top line improvements and bottom line improvements, they are fantastic. Very, very few companies actually do this, very few. But we are still calling ourselves strategic centers. If we are able to make a difference to credit rating, for example, of the organization, credit rating of the organization will involve hundreds of things below it to be able to solve 1 percentage point in the credit rating by international credit rating agencies. If we are able to make a contribution to that, that is when we are engaging with the organization at an enterprise level. So that's one distinction we make over there. Technologies. A lot of conversation can happen upon technologies, but so long as we're talking about technologies that fit the organization, we consider it strategic center. But if we are able to take real-time digital intelligence organization and create organizations which are digitally oriented completely, then those can be looked upon as enterprise initiatives and be classified as enterprise center. And this finally with customer as well. We create a lot of customer engagement programs. So long as our engagement programs, sourcing programs are aimed towards customers and suppliers, we consider ourselves strategic centers. But if we do product modeling and customer experience excellence, that's where we consider ourselves our enterprise center, where the customer entire experience through the journey, all touch points of the customer we impact and create superlative excellence experience for the customer. That makes it an enterprise center. So few distinctions, because we find that there's a lot of confusion between what is possibly a strategic center versus an enterprise center.
And I think just concluding, I know we have little rushed, still we have taken more than 15 minutes over time. The best thing which I would like to highlight, 2 parts. I think the first is there's a lot of inputs from the industry which has gone into it, right? So as I said, we have a good 80+ interactions to receive inputs and then build this and evolve this model. A lot of time on the research has gone into it, and a lot of really the midnight oils has been burnt. And we literally used to have some calls at 11 and 1 o'clock in the morning and so on and so forth to discuss this model. That's one part. So a lot of content has gone into it. The second part is, many times we have seen when we are having the interactions with some of the leaders is that they'll pick one item of it and say, no, that item I am doing or that agenda I am covering, so I am a strategic center. That is not good enough. You need to be having, I think a lot of people talked about, we need to have foundation as a hygiene, right? So they need to be, of course, you need to be a process center, you need to be a service center, you need to be a value center all across in terms of commitment and competitive edge. and then only you can say now I am progressing into strategic. Just not by doing one component or element, you can't say I have moved beyond a maturity. So that is going to be very critical how we look at holistically this entire thing. I leave this page on the screen, and I think, as I said, this will be available very shortly to your desk, so you can have a quick look of it, and please feel free to ask any questions back to Sanjay only, and he'll be able to respond during the breaks, etc., etc. Thank you, everyone. I think maybe we'll have to have a short break, and I request, sorry, I'm just barging into your area.
No, that's perfectly
I
fine.
think we need to have a still short break to manage our time so that we earn our lunch on the time, otherwise we'll be pushing. Yeah, we'll just keep a short break, 15 minutes. Thank you.
So a short 10 minutes break, if you could all reassemble here at 12 o'clock. In the interest of time, you can bring the tea and coffee inside. Thank you. So let's reassemble at 12. Hi, may I request everyone to please come back into the hall. You may bring your cups of tea and coffee inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi and welcome back. So on your tables you find the RISE framework, which is for your reference, but soft copies of this would be sent to you soon. Yeah, that's the one. So we move on to session 4, success stories and case presentation. The topic, drafting integrated technologies, a tripod of conventional, next-gen and enabling technologies. And the eminent panelists, may I request each one of you to Dr. Kumar Vishwanathan, Richard Alvarez and Srinivas Kopulu. Requesting each one of you gentlemen to come up while I briefly go over the bios. Serge DeVos, Managing Director, Interaxis ZX Ventures, a global investment and innovation group of AB. Serge currently leads the setup of a new venture at Anheuser-Busch InBev. The purpose of that venture is to bring GCC capabilities to the market to help other companies successfully try GBS. Tarun is a chartered accountant by profession and change leader by nature. He is an enterprising business leader with a perfect blend of consulting and operation, strong expertise in disruption, management, business transformation, digital enablement. Tarun Ahi. Dr. Kumar Vishwanathan, Head Shared Services, Mindtree. Welcome, Dr. Vishwanathan, a leadership coach and a human resource professional with a master's degree in management, awarded an honorary doctorate for people management by a New York-based university in 2019. He has over 30 years of experience in the HR space and in the IT industry. He is a founding member of Conference Board's Asia Pacific Shared Services Council. Richard Alvarez, VP and Head Program and Business Transformation Shared Services. He is from the Aditya Birla Group, Ultratech Cement. Welcome, Richard. A chartered accountant by profession with an accelerated management program from ISB, having invested over 24 plus years with large companies, helping them build scalable institutions, leveraging relevant technology. He has handled roles in the areas of business development, sales, corporate strategy, and operations for these companies. So it's over to you, Srinivas, to take this session ahead. All the best.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Audible, right? Yeah. Great. Good afternoon. Thank you, SSF, for this opportunity. And I've been actually associated with SSF since the beginning, and we were talking about that last night. But the best talk about the Davos event. Everybody remembers because of Davos. So my sincere suggestion to the SSF founders, Ravi, Anand, Rakesh, is you make Hyderabad your permanent location. SSF will be known forever. Yep. On that optimistic note, we'll get the session going. Exciting topic. The panel members to share their experience accordingly first is how has been the journey. How has been the journey from enterprise tech from enterprise tech on the manual way of doing things. You know, you all are very familiar with those finance professionals. I hope Sanjay is in the room. So from manual way of doing it to enterprise tech like ERP and other good stuff, to process tech or enable tech, as Rakesh says, of getting some of the new age digital going, and finally to the future, which is the intelligent way of doing things. How has been your journey on this? Number one. Number two is, I think the focus since yesterday has been what's the deliverable out of this. We will leapfrog to the current focus on business outcomes. What has this journey delivered in terms of business outcomes? What has it delivered in terms of pilots to scaling? A lot of these initiatives, especially in today's world, are stuck in pilots. Really, have we reached a scale, which is probably the higher levels what Rakesh and Sanjay presented. And finally, the third but most important is the talent, skilling, and taking them to a digital fluency level, which means organization is self-running on these initiatives. So three aspects: business outcomes or scale, and the third is the fluency. Yep. So do you think this topic and the focus is relevant, useful for all of you? You could just do a raise of hands. This topic, because I had the opportunity to be on the both sides. I am a business user for a lot of these services most of my life. I also had a stint of about 10 years running shared services, back office, from AR to AP to bookkeeping to contracts to commercials. So everything in the office is Venkat. So early on, he didn't deliver, because then there are many people seeking his time. So he didn't deliver to my expectations. I was a bit in the kind of a conflicting, confronting manner with him. Then I realized, saying, look, he's the most important guy more than my boss, because he's clearing my expense bills, and which I am always late. So I said no point in confronting him, he should be my most valuable friend. So from a manual based way of meeting all our SLAs, Venkat, my first support services person, to my last job where we have actually did an acquisition, and the finance team was the front to strategically advise on how to construct the acquisition, to value it, to completely close. I think that is the journey that I have experienced personally, from shared service assistance to transformation. A big round of applause to all of you and your teams who do this very quietly and diligently in the back to make business look good. Yep, on that note, we will start. The format is we will have each of the panel members speak about their journey, 6-7 minutes. We're going to start with Richard. And after every one of the speakers, we're going to have a quick round of Q&A. We are free to open to the house to ask questions. We'll also have a quiz for you, by the way, from the presenters table that we are going to have Ravi distribute or hand over to the winner. Yes, there is the packet lying there. Yeah, and the famous Karachi biscuits in that. Yeah, manufactured and delivered. We'll open questions at the end of every speaker's slot. With that, I'll request Richard to start with his views. And Richard's, when I started in comes from Ultra Cement, and Richard has seen the journey from manual distributed finance ops to a single finance sort of journey so far. And Richard has got a killer combination, by the way. Richard is a finance professional and has passion and interest on technology. Wherever I have come across finance persons high on tech, believe me, that's a killer combination. So let's hear from Richard on the journey and the value it's been delivered to the organization. Over to you, Richard.
Hi, Srini, thanks. Thanks, SSF Forum for having me here, and the esteemed panel members. Srini has been generous, giving me 7 minutes. I'll try to wrap that up in that time. So this was in 2004-05. I had been to Sydney at my Oracle office, and during the weekend I was at Darling Harbour, and I took a small cruise there, and I was talking to the young captain. And one interesting insight he gave was he and his girlfriend works only 6 months in a year, and the next 6 months they travel around the world. Coming as a surprise to me where I come from and the conditioning which we have, I asked him 2 simple questions. How do you ensure you get your job back after 6 months? And don't you have the responsibility to have your own house, like we do in India? So in India, even if you want to get married, you need to have a house, right? So that's the first starting point. So building houses, family, building solutions, helping build nation is what we do as Ultratech, 3rd largest cement company in the world, and I do take pride in that, Srini. I'll move on to the next slide. So do I get to? Sure. Yeah. So I'll cover it in 5 slides. While it may not do justice to the effort which my leaders have put in to bring that center over here, neither to you guys where you all are expecting a lot of experience sharing from me, but we are available in our office in Pune. Whenever you want to have a one-to-one discussion, we can be available for you guys. So that's about our business. 50,000 crores is what we have crossed lately, 120 million tons, and around 50 plus manufacturing unit, 40 plus marketing locations, and 3 line of business, grey, white, and RMC business, apart from UBS. This is our UKC towers, the 4 towers. We process around 1.7 million invoices per annum. We have 4 towers, P2P, R2R, IDT, and MDM. We do compliance for GST at around 15,000 crore annually. We close around 75 books every quarter. So though these are not legal entity per se, when you need to compulsorily close books at a unit level, to ensure control, it is at a unit level, and hence the 75 books per quarter. The technologies which support us are of two types. One which were already in existence when we started the journey, like which we then moved to cloud. We already had GST tools like the Signet and EY tools. What we didn't have is to enable remote processing, right? We didn't have image processing to do from the shared service center, most of us, or all of us rather, and that's Sapiens. And to enable our help desk, we had MEO in place. So having this technology and the towers, was it a simple way to get through it, right? How did we manage the change? So given this organization which we are in, there is one advantage and one disadvantage. Disadvantage is that external in perspective is very limited. So the people are like well versed within their own process, but to accept any change becomes very difficult, right? So I'll give you an example. When we introduce a technology called SAP AFC, we are in the process of it. So today we are closing 75 books, controlling it through an Excel every quarter, and we have 3 stakeholders at a minimum for each books, that is UKSC, RO, and my corporate, and at least 10 sub-processes, which leads me to around 2,500 line items to be monitored, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 5, and day 6, right? So when we said we'll get into digitized, raised to us is we have been doing, we have derived as if there is any change which we are bringing, which is beyond any individual, encompasses a lot of my population in the organization. It's an institution based, which is going to last more than 2 years, 3 years. The decision is top down. And while we say it is top down, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have a successful adoption rate. So what we do is a hybrid model where we have a top down structure as well as we go at a bottom line, accustoming my customer to adopt those technology. So I'll move on to the next slide. How did we go about doing all this? Yeah. So these are 3 groups. I'll try and explain. The first one tells us how we did a proof of concept. So we took a Western cluster, Gujarat, and that kind of gave us a representation of a large unit, small unit, marketing locations, yes, and all the complexity which represented my whole of India, and that was around 20%. So we did a pilot over there. We called those people to our center. We did brainstorming, we called it, and whatever we can do it in the later stage we identified, we took them on board. There was resistance. We went very slow in that pilot. Instead of a quarter, we spent 2 quarters in it. But that kind of helped us to nail it very nicely, and the scaling up was quite rampant, right? So we did 65 to 650 in 8 quarters, straight 8 quarters, and half of those numbers came during the pandemic time. And that's where the second pillar explains it. So we brought in a concept of virtual UKSC, and here my leaders, my delivery leaders, my enabling leaders, my HR leaders played a very important role into embarking in a new way of hiring people. Of course, we all did it, but then it was not thinkable when the start of the pandemic. New way of training, new way of engaging. So we did all that. And the final group I would like to take you to is transformation. So transformation, there are 3 parts where the focus is today for us. One is when we lifted and shifted the process, we said we'll take the process to the next level. So we have introduced operating model which is industry specific today. Earlier it was unit facing, now we have process facing towers. Productivity obviously is a given. We have a consolidation benefit via large numbers, 650. So that was one of the other target. Right scaling, right? For an Indian company, arbitrage was never on the table, and hence introduction of shared services took so long. Unlike a driver for the shared service, part of it is, I can explain to you given a couple of minutes. So we had people from plant who are decade plus experience, right? And what they used to do is they used to do multitasking. So you have level 1 process, you have a level 2 process in terms of complexity and knowledge, and level 3 process. All these 3 things that one individual used to do. And what in turn had happened is the comp also was 3x more, right? So after transition, what we introduced was an operating model which we de-skill the process. We said level 1 will be done by X number of people, level 2 are different, and level 3 different. That kind of enabled us to right skill and get a resource maybe at a lower cost. So that was the right skilling which we targeted. So arbitrage is not there, but right skilling definitely is there. Growth and expansion was on our radar. So we are a group business with 12 businesses internationally also. So that's kind of could possibly leapfrog us into double the headcount. So that's on our radar. That's not a mandate which we have. We need to sell ourselves to them. And finally, value creation is where we will look at in terms of analytics. So did we achieve those numbers and the targets? So the question always asked, like Srini must be more interested, how much value do you create out of digitization? Does it create, right? And every time that question is asked, maybe we get this. So let me, before I answer that question, let me take you to a context. So as I think Mr. Jha also yesterday he mentioned, while the cost is always on the table, you need to be there, what other things is important? So I'll take you to the next slide. Is all the 3 components are in the slide, but let's focus on the left side of it. So this is where we grew in 2x in 7 years as a business, and will be 133 million tons next year. And the second group is the relative priority. So we are around 50,000 crores and the EBITDA is around 12,000, which leads us to 23 to 25% of sales. The employee cost overall, if I look at the audited P&L, it looks at around 2,500 crores, which is 5%. And F&A cost, I will assume not more than 10% of the overall employee cost. Even at a safer bet, it is not more than 0.3 to 0.5%. Now, for an organization as a center like us, we have a choice. Of course, we need to be nimble and be efficient, but the larger pie, and we won't be moving the needle anywhere if I focus my full attention on that 0.3 to 0.5. But that's not to say that we will not achieve it. We are on track, but the larger pie lies in improving the EBITDA. So we kind of said we do not have a cost arbitrage. The cost itself per se to the sales is very, very less. So our focus, the management focus on us would be very negligible. So how do we still enforce this, right? How do we bring visibility to our center? So the reason and the compelling reason was expanding business, that is on the left side, and we are still growing. Changing compliance environment, that is GST, etc., which was already in place, and there are more to come. And finance focus on strategy, that's the 3 reasons which we embarked upon. On realization perspective, process improvement and CMM level, we are there, so around 40 to 50%. Productivity, we are set back a bit. One of the reasons is pandemic, so we are set back by some quarters, but we are reaching around 40 to 45%. And right skilling, yes, we have reached almost 95% of the target, what we are set to achieve. The last slide, let me move on to the last slide. Okay, so if you see on the left axis, your left side, you start with basic digitization, which just gives you tracking of what work is coming to you and gives you a basic control, nothing more than that. As you move upwards, you get efficiency and productivity. So the example of the first one at the bottom, we have a case manager and data cap where the workflow initiated the invoice coming to us, etc. The moment we integrated it with my SAP and a 3-way match, it gave me productivity, etc. So that's the value chain up. And on the right side, the digitization, as we move on the right, it brings in more intelligence. And that intelligence, if I take it further, it creates value for me, and that's what I call intelligent automation. So that's from a layman, and the green ones are which we have already implemented, and the black we are in pipeline. This is an illustrative list, we have a long list to go. I think that's about it. Srini, over to you. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent, Richard. Excellent for that. And I mean, I'm a bit gauze to see that you have 35% productivity and it's still amber. So you have a really aggressive target there. And what's the word you used? De-skill and right skill. I think that's a good takeaway in terms of we're only talking about skilling and skilling, but I think that is important. How do you transform an organization. Yesterday's question on 40+-year-olds, get them right skilled, skilled in some sense is very important. Yes, questions for Richard? He said yes. Active participation, we said there's a gift, right guys? Girls?
Richard, very interesting journey. You've kept it very simple, but I think sometimes keeping it simple works very well. But I had a couple of questions. One, I did see the O2C missing in your piece. I saw the P2P, I saw tax and compliance, I did see R2R as well. Is there any specific reason why it is not here, or you're having a different approach?
Right, Shankar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Shankar, for that question. So the way we operate our business, we have a CNF who actually does this for us, the cash collection, the billing, etc. And they are very, very nimble in that sense. And that's quite entrenched in the business today. So for me to pick that up and bring and consolidate it actually would not add a delta value. Second, my collection and my receipt accounting is fully automated today. I have a virtual account. When my collection comes in, if there is a name of the customer and the invoice, it goes and match and applies it also. So again, here I do not bring any further value add to my business. So having said that, that's on our radar. We are looking at whether we would make a delta incremental benefit to the business. We'll certainly will plan that.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, back there.
Sure.
There's one more coming your way.
Hi Richard, this is Venkat. Thanks for the good presentation. Now I have two questions to you. First, you are highly focused on the finance part of it. So is that the only value add that the organization has delivered through this route, number one? And number two is, I see that it's highly focused again on the captive part of it. So what are some of the learnings that a third-party service provider can take from this?
Good question. So finance, again, I think finance, we are all finance, so, and ultimately we are measured on money, right? So we do insights also. Again, that's not only on numbers, we are trying to give on employee analytics also. We are just building it. We are working with a group data analyst team to understand the employee behavior in terms of why retention and why not retention, right? For my larger organization, that's not a problem, but we are trying to build that. So number one. So it's not only on this focus, yes, but that's primary, I agree to it. As far as outsourcing is concerned, if I get your question right, do we also have a hybrid model with outsourcer, or
no?
So what an outsourcer wants to take from this, right?
No, my question is, how can we replicate your success story to a third-party service provider?
So I think the third-party service provider has a little bit more advantage than what we have. We do not have that scale which the third-party outsource provider has today. So we are just 650. We may become double maybe a couple of years when we expand it to the group. But I do not see 1,000 number also a good leverage what an outsourcer would have, right? So, but yes, I think.
Yeah, that's a good question, Richard. We'll carry that forward.
Yeah, we'll carry that forward.
In terms of running a dedicated shared services, what is the takeaway for outsources? Good topic for lunch also, Venkat. On that note, thank you, Richard, and thanks a lot for your excellent session. Quick two quiz questions from Richard's session, if people could help you answer. One is, what is the ROI finally that they got in the 3 dimensions? You did have a summary slide at the end showing 3 numbers. What are the ROIs they got on skilling, on productivity, and the third one? Anybody? Okay, just get up and, yeah. Sorry?
35% productivity.
Okay, that's one number. What is the other one? Skill. 25. That's good answer. So you got to. I think by this, at this rate, we'll open the box and all of us will have one biscuit each. But good for that. And finally, one more. What is the location or state in which they started their POC or piloting the? Excellent. Everybody's awake, Richard. On that note, thank you. We move on to Tarun now. Tarun again, by the way, and one more point of Richard and the same accord by Tarun was, in COVID time, cement manufacturing was on. We think IT and hybrid, working from home. He's saying what working from home? Cement manufacturing was on in the COVID time, and great to see the manufacturing world silently doing what they're supposed to do. On that note, to the largest steel manufacturer, JSW, and Tarun had the experience of starting when documents were being read, and it used to take a couple of days to read the documents, to traversing the journey on the tech enablement of shared services, to RPA enablement, to all the way to NLP enablement. And by the way, they were also working in COVID. He had some innovation also done during COVID, and finally the icing for us is the business outcome. Tarun and his team have managed to deliver 25 crores of, if I may quote the number, of ROI on successfully transforming and delivering outcome from the shared service. On that note, Tarun, today for us. Over to you. Would you like to say it or do you say it? Please. And Tarun is a chartered accountant by profession and a transformation leader by choice, as he says. He's seen the best of both worlds of finance and consulting. And over to you, Tarun.
So good afternoon, everyone. How's the Josh?
One more time.
People are sleeping? How's the Josh?
Hi.
That's it. Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank SSF for giving us this opportunity, and to the esteemed panel for sharing JSW business case. Now, when we talk about conglomerate, majorly business in India, and as you can see, we have major business in tier 3 cities. When we talk about tier 3 cities, our vendors are giving those document invoices in a handwritten form. As many vendor, as many type of invoices. So this share service, we have supporting close to 30 plus plants, and we are managing the whole group business, which is steel, cement, infra, paint, coated business, mines, and energy. So imagine the complexity of process for a steel, where logistic cost may not be that important compared to a cement industry, where logistic costs play a vital role in deciding your EBITDA. So we have this share service for finance, and when we talk about finance, it is not limited to P2P, O2C, or R2R. We also support on taxation and international finance like import, export, and governance. Then we have HR, where we look for the HR operation, payroll, employee master data, and then commercial part starting from procurement, PR till procurement. So these slides look too complex, but it's important to understand the success of our digitization lying on these pillars. So initially when we talk about transformation, so imagine a situation when there are 200 people working on different plants, and they have those invoices, 100 of invoices lying in their desk. Now, if my chairman want to understand a particular payment, going on a meeting with someone, whether that payment is done or not, or some conversation is there, then we have to check who's having that invoice. That was a scenario pre-GPS. Now, normally, organization scan these documents to digitize. so that we have a digital form. What we did differently, we understand our business is diversified, and then locations are also diversified for each business. So we created an Aadhaar number for each invoice, which is an alphanumeric number, which an outsourced partner who is scanning can understand that logic, and further at an nth stage, if we want to understand any slice and dice of any type of expense or any invoice, that can be done in a flip of seconds. So if you see these numbers, that's the business, location, type of expense, year, number of invoice, everything makes it within one number, which help us to digitize our processes now. Is also in a inorganic growth, and when we acquire any organization, any small companies, so unless and until we are able to integrate it, we won't be able to provide the required outcome which business is expecting. So we created a structured 30-90 days plan whereby we can do a due diligence and just move that process to best in class which we have created for the group. So within a 90 days plan, organization, that new company can start providing the same style of working, same information, same slice and dice, which we are doing it for group. And this helped us, especially when we enter and paint with information which at a group level, plant, corporate, GBS, whole process can be transformed. So I will share quickly two use case which we have done it, and to share on this, especially on audit report automation. So normally we take process on RPA or machine learning. Here what we have done, we have the pack which we submit to our auditor for 10 different locations. There was a huge requirement from auditor that they get information in a different form, or they don't get comfort because of the complexity of process. There's a lot of data massaging which someone is doing on those data. So we pick up this project, we automate somewhere around 34 reports which we are submitting to auditor. These reports are now being end-to-end automated and providing to our auditor, which has created a huge comfort on external auditor. Important here is there's a different journey which we have done in this process automation, and most important was that hypercare in production. So when we worked on this transformation, we observed success rate was bit less. And the most important thing is when you do certain UAT in different process in a UAT environment versus when you work on these RPA or perform those UAT on product, how from a paper document, we have now moved to a touchless invoices. And when we talk about this, outcome to business, so prior to GBS, overall cycle time was more than 155 days from PR till payment. Now we have bring this down to 62 days, which include once the PR is issued, goods should come to plant, how GRN is done, how internal certification is being performed, and then document reached to GBS, and then these are processed and paid to vendor. So in JSW, 99.95% accuracy is not acceptable. When we talk about SLAs, KPIs, or outsourced, generally we get 99.9%, 99.5%. So we have to ensure more and more compliance and quality to the process. So here, by reducing this overall cycle time and by transforming certain processes, we are able to give close to 20 crores of benefit year on year, and the cycle time was reduced without change management. And we need to understand what different we are doing in those change management. So like to bring people on board, we follow 5A concept: alignment of people, awareness about RPA, acceptance of what we are talking about, adoption of these RPA or processes, and then acceleration of automation. So we run different projects like Namkaran, where employees suggest name for a bot. This build a connect where people are not feeling RPA or automation as a challenge. They feel this as a support to them.
Very good.
So the bot which is the bot which manages orchestrator is a Chanakya bot which manages all other bots, and these names are given by employees.
Excellent.
And then we have done a bot cutout, which has a QR code, so people can connect and see where the project is, what automation are being done. Then a quick one, when we talk about digital POC scaling, so we didn't only did this automation, but we also looked at how we evaluate bot performance, what productivity bot is giving compared to another bot, how we can increase bot adoption, and then how we train our people to move from attended bot to unattended bot to attended bot. So they can code themselves for small processes and they can utilize those processes.
We need to summarize quickly.
Yeah. And then give an overall journey where we start from a paper invoice, where we move to a touchless processing, so which gives a double-digit efficiency year on year in last 6 years, and especially during COVID time with these processes, we have given a 50 FT surrender, or I would say efficiency, plus close to 100 crores of 5-year business outcome benefit which we have delivered, which is appreciated and accepted by the group CFO.
Excellent. On that note, Tarun, we may have to close it here. Give a bigger round of applause to Tarun for an excellent work. Any quick questions for Tarun?
Hi Tarun, this is Sanjay from Global. The audit report automation, how much has this impacted the close cycle timeline?
So close cycle was already transformed in 8 days close with giving a final cut to auditor. But what this helped us to reduce our board meeting timelines, where auditor take limited time and there is a limited to and fro and questioning. Because now they have a comfort, these reports are coming directly from system.
And has it also been consolidating the schedule part which we prepare every quarter or every month?
So that we are working on phase 2 at present. Clause schedule 3 notes we are working on.
Yep. Any other question for
Tarun, hi, Shudipto here.
Yes.
Just curious, in your RPA journey, did you use OCR technology, and if yes, what was your experience?
I cannot see you. Where are you? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry, what you are saying?
So the question is, in your RPA journey, did you use OCR, and if yes, what was the experience?
So very funny part, and I would like to share that. So normally the organization moved to OCR. We move out from OCR because we saw these different type of documents are not giving success rate in OCR more than 10-15%. So what we did, as we have outsourced our solution for scanning, and we have a different governance for scanning, so we build a support system which is integrated to our SAP. So that governance information, when that person is entering while scanning, and it's interface with SAP, so we don't need OCR. We have eliminated OCR concept.
That's very interesting.
Excellent.
I'll catch up with you separately.
I guess we have to stop here. All questions to Tarun during lunch, please. Tarun, please, you're joining us for lunch. On that note, a round of applause to Tarun. Our next speaker is Kumar, while I request Kumar to come up. But quick quiz questions. What's the ROI per year that Tarun has managed to deliver the organization in rupees? Who said 20? 25. There's a bidding going on, guys. Come on. We'll give the rest to Tarun as the target. 20 crores is the right answer as per his slides. As per my information, it was 25. But good, you're following both the numbers. And what's the process that is taken up in RPA, and how many reports were put into RPA? Sorry? 34 is the correct answer. Who is that? Raise your hand. Oh, right at the back. Right, great. But by the time the biscuits reach you, I'm not sure what state they will be in. We'll try, but good answer there. Good. On that note, Kumar, we'll welcome you. Kumar is a industry folk from IT services industry. From cement to steel, now we're moving to the services industry. And Dr. Kumar has been in various roles before, but importantly in Mindtree for the last nearly 10 years, trying to, from scratch, conceptualize to run to scale shared service operations, multifunction, global, and today's hottest topic is Mindtree, and out of that Kumar and the shared services that he's taken to the next orbit, where he's now he's reached out to Harvard Business Review for benchmarking their shared service. Now we're talking about a best practice going international. Kumar is going to share that whole success story and on how HBR happened to what has he taken to HBR. And by the way, Kumar is a hardcore Chennaiite, and he thinks he moved to Bangalore to improve Bangalore. Yes, and we need a lot of such people to move to Bangalore to really make an improvement there in Bangalore, the way the infrastructure stands. On that note, Dr. Kumar, for you. Thank you, Tarun.
Thank you, Srini. Can you all see my slides? I have 15 slides. Can you? You can't? Okay, because since you are waiting for lunch, I decided not to use any slides. Thank you. I don't have slides, but I do have a story. I just want to tell a story. I'll try to do it in the next 5-6 minutes so that Srini's heart doesn't beat any faster. If you look at any 20-year-old today, and if he is very studious, extremely education oriented, his or her goal would be to get a degree in a school like Harvard. Go to Harvard. Just getting admission into Harvard, getting a degree is a big deal. But what if you make Harvard come to you? How big is that? Let's just park that question for the time being. Sometime in 2013, I joined Mindtree. In 2014, we started the Shared Services Center. We started with people function. We call it people function. We don't call human resources. We don't call employees. We call them Mindtree minds. I don't know what is going to happen when LTI Mindtree comes into place, but I think some of the best practices are going to be retained. That's what we keep hearing from the board and the management. The idea was, at that point in time, we were about $430 million company, IT services firm. We are purely an IT services firm. If you want to know more about Mindtree, I'm not going to share you any slide. It's right now, just pick a paper, you will see something about Mindtree today. We are there everywhere, all over the place. So just go to mindtree.com to know more about it. At that point in time, we were less than $500 million company, about $430 million, about 11,000 odd people. Typically, if you look at such a profile, they will not have a shared services. They will not even think of shared services. If you look at shared services organizations at least in IT companies, in India at least, to some extent even outside India, they will look at starting a shared services organization in the firm if they reach certain scale, maybe 50,000 people, 60,000 people, or maybe 2.5 billion, 3 billion, at least 1.5 billion in terms of revenue. But we were less than $500 million, about 430 million and 11,000 odd people. But that's when we thought we should start. Like somebody was saying, we should learn from what others have done and then try to see what we can do. That's how the journey started in 2014. The initial years, of course, was to see how we can sell shared services internally and bring in all the process, try to unify, standardize, simplify, as much as possible, even automate. We started with people function, that is human resources, the talent function, the entire talent management group, the talent acquisition, the entire life cycle, the H2R, what we call it today. We also expanded that to other functions like finance, employee reimbursements, payroll, vendor payments, invoice processing, legal compliance, legal support, immigration, etc. So it's a multifunctional situations that we started running. And as part of this journey, of course, we talked about value sometime back, without which you just cannot even exist. So SLAs, KRI, KPIs, cost per transaction, cost arbitrage, etc., all that was achieved in a period of about 3 years or so. So the next thing was, what do we do next? Being an IT services firm and being a company, what we always keep saying, born digital, we love to taste our own wines before we serve it to our customers. That's the language that we speak internally. Taste our own wine before we serve it to our customers. If we are a digital company, we should do digital to our own Mindtree minds, that is employees. If I can do some solutions to my customers, why not for my employees? That was a thought process. That's when the whole world was talking about chatbots, RPAs, writing a blog, discussing in a forum like this, we silently went about creating a chatbot, a multifunctional enterprise-based chatbot. At that point in time, we were about 14,000 people. Way back in 2016, end of 2016, we rolled out an enterprise-based chatbot, which can not only answer employee queries or Mindtree Minds queries across all functions globally, but it can also do transactions. We had multiple APIs that were connected with different applications, all the transaction applications, so that instead of going to the application and performing those tasks, making a request, approving and stuff like that, we can do everything within the chat window. That was something that we did in 2016, end of 2016, early 2017. I had about 140 RPA bots running for internal process, not for customers, not for customers. Those were big numbers that my sales team was doing, but this is for my own people. This is what I mean by tasting our own wine before we serve it to our customers. Now, why did we do all this? At some point in time, after we had reached some level of process maturity, we thought we should have a big goal. The goal was to make this a world-class institution. Now, how do we define world-class? There are multiple ways. Some people take the certification route. I've done certification from some of my previous companies and I don't believe in it. I did that, I got my salary, I got my promotion, but I never believed in that. One of the ways that I truly believe that you can call yourself world-class is you should be recognized by a world-class institution that are doing world-class work. And if they can write a story about it, I think that's the best thing that can happen to you. Now, who can be a world-class institution? I think it's a no-brainer, an institution like Harvard. How do I get the attention of Harvard? Why should I even look at me? I'm just 7-year-old, Shachi Visas organization. There are big brothers who've been running Shachi Visas for 35, 40 years. I'm just crawling. There are people running marathon. So how do I gain attention? That's when we came up with this concept. So we came up with a balance. The balance was, on one end, we had a bucket called excellence, where you will put all the SLAs, the automations, the process improvements, efficiency, etc., etc. The cost arbitrage, the best cost optimization, etc. That's what we call excellence. On the other hand, we called what we call as inclusivity. So we want to do something that has never been tried before. When we think about inclusivity and diversity and inclusivity, everybody talks about, maybe sad. There are people who look at people who are below poverty line. These are things that typically everybody looks at. But we thought this is something that everybody does. We should do something new. That's when we thought of, why not take this work to prison inmates? People doing a life sentence in prison is to become a transformed person so that he or she can become a productive citizen once he or she comes out of the prison, not just to penalize that individual for some crime that the person had committed. So that was our thought process. We thought we should give them, instill some hope and inject some positivity so that once they finish their term and they come out, they can be productive citizens and they can get some jobs and make some livelihood. So during their time when they are serving sentences in prison, we thought we'll go and teach them certain HR process, finance process, and make them do some work, and also give them money that will help them run their family. That was our inclusivity drive that we came up, and we did that. It took about 1 year for me to convince my management, and it took less than 15 minutes for me to convince the police department. And eventually we did that. So we have about 10 people we have set up, and then said, yeah, here is somebody doing something slightly different. And of course, the journey wasn't easy. The automation continues to happen. The inclusivity continues to happen, of course, but recently, unfortunately, because of too much of automation, we had to stop that inclusivity drive because many of those manual, we are now thinking of engaging them on skill building instead of making them do some work. So that was something that we did. So with this story, we do next. Interestingly, I figured out that Harvard is also a customer of Mindtree. We've been providing some solutions to Harvard. So I reached out to my account partners, my account guys, and told them, can you put me onto the right professor in the Harvard Business School? They tried, but nothing really happened. Because the key thing is, unless you have somebody doing some research or some professor showing some interest, this story is never going to be bought. I learned it the hard way. Then I reached out to one of the board members, an ex-board member of Mindtree, who is now a professor in Harvard. He helped me knock a few doors, but eventually nothing really happened. And then finally, the last but one, there was a book, I would recommend this book to all of you. There's a book called Rebel Talent, written by Francisco Gino, an Italian by birth, but an American today. She wrote this book. I finished that book. That's when it occurred to me that she is also a Harvard professor. I sent her a LinkedIn request, and she accepted it for no reason. I really don't know. I wrote to her, but nothing happened. So I had actually on the point of actually giving up. That's when suddenly something struck me. Why not directly reach out to all the professors? I went to the Harvard website. You can access the email IDs. You can look at the profile of the Harvard professors. I picked up about 15 different Harvard professors in the human behavioral or the humanities side and human resources side, reached out to them. Out of the 15, one of them fell into my net. After a struggle of about close to 3 years, but the thing is, they like the story of doing something, what we call as digital inside in Mindtree. Having this digital fluency that not only we do for the customers, but what we can do for our own people, our own employees. That was something that they really liked. They never expected us to have a chatbot that had already answered about 2 lakh queries at that point in time. Now it has crossed 3 lakhs. And my RPA transaction has, RPA bots transaction has crossed more than 1,50,000 transactions in the last. I wanted to find out what was the turning point. Where did you really mess up? What was your real problem? What was your problem that you're trying to solve? And that was how the core got developed. And then I'm happy to let all of you know with a lot of pride that July 2021, last year, we had our case study that was finally approved, and now it is being discussed in different classes in Harvard. They have an interesting process before they publish it. It goes through 3 or 4 levels of iterations. Basically 2-3 batches of MBA students will discuss, figure out, come back with some queries. Maybe we'll have to make some alterations depending upon what the students want, and then it is going to be published. And when it gets published, maybe at that point in time, whether it happens in Hyderabad or not, I'll come back and share that story.
Excellent,
thank you very much.
Excellent. Wonderful, wonderful. On that happy note, Kumar, any closing words before I open to questions?
I'm done.
Yep. So getting benchmarking, aspiring and getting it done through HBR and is equally an arduous journey as building the shared services internally. So we thought it will be of interest and insightful to you all to have this story shared today. Thank you for that, Kumar. Any quick questions? The more questions you ask, the more lunch will get delayed. Yep. But it's a very interesting. I asked Kumar to share the report once it's out. Thank you for that wonderful thing. It's really inspirational, Kumar. Quick quiz on Kumar's thing. How many bots were installed? Sorry?
140.
No. Little higher. Yeah, think about that. Answer me in lunch. I'll still hold the biscuits for you. 240, huh? This is giving a new target, Kumar. But thanks a lot. Give a round of applause to Kumar for that. And I'm going to get more special biscuits for the organizers if they give us 10 minutes more, because we have reserved the best of ABBU in the end, right? Allow us that is okay, right? We can go ahead with Saj. Yep. So we heard about ROI delivery to benchmarking with the best. Now, how do you monetize a shared service? That's probably right up at the strategic level or enterprise level in the rankings. And Surge has moved from from provider to looking to generate money out of the best part of best practice out of the shared service. So we'll like to hear from Surge how the journey has been, and he's been a disruptor in every sense. He first came in and what has been outsourced, he's insourced. That's a huge disruption in services industry. We don't like those words of insourcing, by the way, Surge. And then he went to disrupt in terms of monetizing from a cost to a revenue generator. And he's also got a personal trait of disrupting things, where he got his family to move to India from Belgium. They were very happy 4 years back. Right? But all disruptions, efforts, hard work have a happy ending. Ladies and gentlemen, Surge on his story.
Thank you. Does this work? Yeah, you can hear me, no? Yes, you can hear me. All right, good afternoon. So, मेरा नाम Serge है. Yeah. I'm living in India since 4 years, right? Originally from Belgium, 4 years here. I learned some Hindi. I must admit, I lost quite a lot of it during the pandemic, because we didn't have town halls, or we have some town halls, but you don't have the same energy as you have in a live town hall. So some of my Hindi was gone. But whenever I go to Starbucks, so my name is Suraj, but I go to Starbucks and I introduce myself as Suraj. I get my coffee a lot faster than if I try to pronounce my name. Yeah? People look at me a little bit weird, like, man, this doesn't make any sense. You're not called Suraj, no? But anyway, so I'm from AB InBev. Who knows AB InBev? All right. Who knows Budweiser? Everybody knows Budweiser. There you go. So yeah, I'm between you and the lunch. Another about 10 minutes. I was thinking here if I could offer everybody a Budweiser, but I wasn't sure if Rakesh would allow me to do that. No, probably not.
Carry home in the evening.
That's what I wanted to suggest. So for the ones who are interested in what I'm going to present today, I'll offer you a Budweiser tonight. Yeah? So good. So we are AB InBev. Let's see. I do have a couple of slides here. So this is a short summary of our journey. So we started our journey in India, in fact, in 2015 with a partner, Accenture, BOT model. They set up the office for us. So we moved activities from North America, from Europe to India. Was our first presence in India in 2015. And was a great transition. They did an amazing job. But in 2018, we indeed insourced. And I'm a fan of insourcing, I must say. So we moved it back in-house, right? So Accenture did an amazing job transitioning that business, setting it up. We could not have done that without them. That's very simple. They had the brand name. We did not have a brand name, of course, in the country. So, but then we thought, we don't want to have a shared service center in India. That's not why we moved to India, to set up a shared service center. We wanted to move to India and open an office in India because we want to tap into the analytics and tech talent here in the market. If I wanted to set up a shared service organization that is cheap, we would not have set up in India. And we for sure would not have set up in Bangalore. Simple as that. As an organization, we have 6, 7 shared services around the world. I can tell you, India is not the cheapest location. And we also don't want to be the cheapest location. Right? And that's what we mentioned in 2018. We are not here to be the cheapest location. Let other locations, Argentina, for example, is cheaper than us. Mexico is slightly cheaper. We had an office in Ukraine, unfortunately, of course, now closed, was much cheaper than India. We want to have the best office in the world, right? Our office will always be sustainable. There's hardly anything, no, it's not really great. Engagement, employee engagement was 68%. I think the benchmark in India at the time was around 70%, so also not very great. Business value, of course, we were not generating any business value. And so this is the journey. We are now 4 or 5 years later, and you see those KPIs, how they have evolved. And so the goal here was to bring AI and tech into that global capability center and to drive value with that center. That was the vision that we set out there when we started in 2018. Yeah? And you can see the evolution of the KPIs. NPS last year was 79. Yeah? This is a feedback from hundreds of our internal customers, mainly here, but the feedback of 79 is extremely high. Automation, 112 positions that were automated, literally automated last year. Employee engagement, super proud of this one, 92%. This is industry leading. And then business value, yes, 85 million York, right? So one of the big challenges that everybody faces when you do analytics is that it's very difficult to quantify the saving that you deliver, right? The benefit that you deliver. How do you quantify if you do recommendations? So we have a PMO office in New York that validates every single saving that our GCC and analytics capability delivers, right? And I can tell you we're being challenged quite a lot by that team. So this is the summary of the journey. Very happy that last year we were recognized by the Shared Services Forum. Thank you very much for that recognition. And so, yeah, the main reason why we did this whole journey with AI, so the main reason why we were able to deliver that value is because we brought AI into that operation, into the finance operation, into the HR operation, and the commercial operation that we're doing in the center. Right? And very obvious, no? This is what we saw when we started in 2018. These are the mind-blowing numbers that we process. Well, I had 1,000 people processing invoices worth 50 or 80 billion dollars. No, $50 billion, right? Invoices to customers, $50 billion that we're processing, but nobody's looking into the data, nobody's driving business value. So huge potential, and so each of those solutions that we developed in those 4 years has delivered business value in terms of P&L savings. Here's some concrete examples. We have a portfolio of more than 20 of those solutions in OTC, P2P, A2R, treasury, in every single function in our GCC. We have those solutions, optimization, smart collections engine. All of this is in-house built AI algorithms that we put on top of our data and then we operationalize. So duplicate payments, I think everybody here or most people have probably done a duplicate payments analysis with a vendor. No? They come in, they go through the last 3 years of data, they find whatever, 200 duplicate payments, they recover them for you, they take a cut of 20%. Yeah? They disappear, they come back 2 years later and say, hey, shall we do this again? I say, okay, let's do this again. And you again give 20% cut. What we do is, of course, we go back, but then we operationalize the algorithm. We make sure the algorithm is being used by the P2P team so that no duplicate payment goes out. I don't need to do an audit anymore because every single potential duplicate payment is flagged before the payment even goes out to the supplier. Right? So that's a. So then the question was, okay, what is next with the GCC? No, we won this prize. What else can you do if you won the prize of Rakesh and team here? No, what else can you do? And also a personal question for myself: what's next? 4 years in India. What is going to be my next role? And then we started this. So we started a new venture. It's part of AB InBev. It's literally a startup called Interaxis. Please don't Google us yet. The website is actually now being built. We will only have it in 2 weeks. It's seriously not there yet. We do have interaxis.com, so we'll be there in about 2 weeks. Now, what is Interaxis about? Very simple. Each of those capabilities that we have developed, and here you see the simple flywheel. No? We start developing a new product in GCC. We deploy it in one zone in one region. We scale it across the globe. And then, the last step, you monetize it. You go to the market, you sell that same capability to another company that faces the same problem. Good for us, we get additional ROI on that investment. We get feedback from the market to improve the algorithm. Good for the customer because you implement that algorithm in 3 months' time, 4 months' time, whereas it would take you 1.5 years to get to the same level of accuracy if you would build it on your own or with an AI services company. That's simple as that, the value proposition. Yeah? And so those are the solutions that now I'm changing hats. No, I'm putting my sales hat now, not the GCC hat anymore. So these are some of the solutions that we're today taking to the market. So predicting revenue leakage, predicting payment leakage, and helping you speed up your financial insights. Yeah? And we follow a DVF methodology. I thought this was also interesting to share. We're really approaching this as a startup. So I don't have a budget and a blueprint for the whole year and then, no, I have budget for a quarter. I have KPIs to hit within that quarter. I have to go to the board, present the status of the KPIs, and again, I get a new quarter. So we need to really prove the desirability of the market. Huh? Is this product desirable in the market? Is it viable? Can I make a profit out of it? And is it feasible for me to deliver, right? Can I become a B2B services company where today all we do is sell beer?
Excellent.
And that's it. Thank you.
Well, Serge has got a goal that he wants to convert all industry colleagues to customers. So just be careful. Huh? But Serge, believe me, you're going to put a lot of industry AI product companies out of business at this rate. AI in finance is a very, very hot topic and disruptive. Great to see the growth and the trajectory into monetizing it. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
So, well, we will conclude here. I wish we get more time, but it only will cut into our lunch, I guess. So, and we must enjoy Hyderabad lunch. Yes, any quick questions for Serge before we conclude? You want to know his targets?
Hi, Serge. Hello.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Shilpa from Novartis. Doesn't this monetization of the product that you have in mind go against the identity of a GCC, acting as a shared service provider, as a third-party provider instead? Did you come across that as a challenge?
It's not working, huh? Is it?
No,
yes,
it's working.
now it is.
It's working.
As a challenge in what sense? No? Because there's two ways. I think on the one hand, I think the challenge that we face internally in the company is that people are asking, is this the right thing to do, right? Is this something that we should put attention to, right? So basically, is this worth to build this startup? What is the potential revenue that we can get from this startup? And does that make sense for us to develop that startup, right? So that's one question that I'm getting a lot, obviously, but it's up to me to prove, right? That's what this DVF methodology is about, showing a clear plan for the next 10 years. What can this become, right? My personal view and what I'm presenting to the board is I believe we can create a unicorn in 6-7 years. Simple as that.
All right, very good, very good.
From a customer perspective, you're right. The very first person I called, he's sitting over there, dear friend and colleague Tanmay from Coca-Cola. The first one I called said, Tanmay, need to ask you something. And I moved from this GCC colleague to kind of a salesperson. So in the beginning it's a bit weird because people have a call with you and you're like AB InBev and people know you from the beer and then you come with AI in finance. So people are completely lost. The conversation yesterday as well, people are completely lost when we present. But then once we show the capabilities, every potential customer I've met until now is impressed and nobody has said no. So we're in conversations at the moment with like 10, 15 customers around the world. So not just in India.
Yep.
Very interesting presentation. Should I call you Suraj or Serge?
Suraj is fine.
Okay. So I just wanted to know, I think there's a lot of products or competition already out which are doing these kind of services. So you are going to probably compete with the big IT players. So how do you see that, one? Second, when you start selling a product, are you also planning to sell services along with it?
No, great point. So we did this competitive analysis. I think the main competition for us will be the more boutique AI firms like Fractal, Bridge I2I, Affine, Math Company. That is for us, I think, the main competition because they are focused on deep data science. And that's also where we focus. Obviously, the larger EY, KPMG, Accenture, Genpact, etc. also offer analytics capabilities. But I think our niche is much more with those smaller AI players. where again, we compared the portfolio that they have today, the capabilities they have today, and they're largely focused on commercial, marketing, supply to some extent. Very few are focused on finance, AI in finance, very few on AI in HR, and in procurement. And those are the three areas that we would go to the market with first. And to your second question, our focus, the way we see it today, is really focused on the solution, on the algorithm, not on the consulting around it. So there we would even, I'm in discussions with a lot of other companies to partner with a consulting company, for example, that will do the transformation. I bring the product, deliver the value, institutionalize or no, operationalize the product, and then move on to the next initiative. That's how we see it today.
Excellent. Any more questions? So the quiz question is, what's the value that Serge and team delivered last year, which got audited in New York? And Sanjay, you're not included in the Q&A.
85.88 million.
I said you're not included in the Q&A.
That's fine.
Yes? Paper leaked. Yes, but we will have some more during lunch in terms of when we are free to reach out all the panel members for their insights. As I said, the trajectory is very impressive, from building from scratch to scaling to delivering ROIs to benchmarking to monetizing. Technology is here to disrupt every walk of enterprise and personal lives. My 2 cents is the shared service should look at what is called, yesterday was mentioned, the digital twin concept, which is how each role, each person, each task, to how a team's work, to the entire shared services is going to be digitized in the next few years. So if you build that paranoia into your working and stay ahead, I think it will benefit immensely yourself, your teams, and your organization. On that good note, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity. Thank you, speakers.
Thank you very much. As a token of thanks to all our panelists over here, may I request Mr. Sushil Kedia, Head Finance COE at Tata Steel, to please come up here to give a memento to Dr. Kumar Vishwanathan. Call upon, request Ravinder Bansal, Head of Shared Services at Bharti Airtel, to please come up to give a memento to Tarun Ahi. Requesting Sudesh Jain, Head of Group Finance Shared Services of the Adani Group, to please come up. To present Richard with a memento. Request Nilesh Bhatia, Senior VP Customer Delivery at Quintes Global, to please come up here. To present Serge with a memento. May we have Shilpa Ahir, Head Strategy and Operations Global NGSCs at Novartis, to please come up. To give a memento to Srinivas Kopolu. You too. And now the prize for the quiz quiz winner.
Time, I couldn't think of a better one than this. There are three good things in Hyderabad. One is Karachi biscuits, the other is biryani, and the third is the pearls. The third one is out of budget for me, and the biryani I hope is going to be served, and then here are the Karachi biscuits. And I think, thank you for all your active participation. Since we couldn't in the short time decide who is the winner, I'm going to recognize the great effort by the organizing committee today and yesterday to bring all of us together here. Madam, this is for you and the team.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think so. Thank you very much, all the panelists, for that great session. Yeah, you can have your group picture and enjoy your networking lunch. So we reassemble at 2:15 sharp to continue with the other sessions. Thank you. Enjoy your lunch. Find the RISE framework, which is for your reference.